Howdy, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 25th, 2023, and the time is 5:30 p.m. We're here for the regular session of the Coppell City Council. There is a quorum present, so I'm calling the meeting to order. We will be convening into work session in the first floor conference room. This is a change to our agenda order, but we would like to do work session before we go into executive session. So the public is welcome to join us.
He may have called the meeting to order, so we called it.
I was going to take yours, but
That's okay.
I can't have yourself.
The chair feels taller. Everybody get out of here.
Must have pushed it to the back.
I am.
Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 5:31 p.m. We're convening into work session. I would like to suspend the rules and move executive session until after work session. I'm expecting the executive session to go a little bit long, and we've got a couple of things that we really need to do for work session. So if that's okay, we'll move into section 3. First item is discussion regarding agenda items. Anybody have anything on the agenda they'd like to ask or talk about? Excuse me. Everybody okay to move on?
I'm good.
All right. Item B is discussion regarding the proposed Veterans Memorial. Ms. Jessica Carpenter. I'd like to remind everybody that we've been getting a lot of noise both directions on this. Remember that we selected a group of citizens that we wanted to represent the veterans, and they've been meeting. They presented to the park board, and I'm sorry, not the park board, but
Yeah, no, you're still correct. Still the park.
oh, it is park board. That's right. That name hasn't changed.
You are correct.
No, sir, I did not change what's in the ordinance.
Spoiler alert, that might come later. Not today.
So anyway, the park board has a recommendation, and this group is fully capable of accepting that one at face value or doing something different. Jessica and her department are needing some direction tonight. We don't need to decide on the finality of the project. I know that Councilmember Hill had some suggestions, and I'm sure we'll have some discussion on it, but just keep in mind that she's going to need a go-do next. So at the end of this conversation, she's going to need at least some direction on us what to do next. All right, I think that was enough for me.
I'm done here. You covered everything. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council. I'm here this evening with Samit Patel from Olson Studio, and we're both going to provide you an update on the Veterans Memorial Project thus far. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to be seeking council's feedback regarding the proposed memorial so that we can kind of proceed with next steps for this project. So I'm going to provide you just with the history of the project up to this point, discuss the community engagement efforts that we've undertaken through the process. We do have a very exciting proposed design concept to show you this evening, and then we'll discuss some next steps. So a Veterans Memorial has been discussed for quite some time. We have received input from community veterans about the desire for memorial throughout the years. We've had Veterans Day ceremonies at Rolling Oaks Memorial Center in the past, but we really lack the dedicated space necessary to be able to expand that type of ceremony or celebration. Also, the Parks and Recreation Board has placed, back in 2022, in the summer, during the Project Priority List exercise, they placed the Veterans Memorial as a high priority. And then, as you may recall, during the last budget workshop process that the council undertook last summer, council had also expressed a desire for Veterans Memorial, and it was then included in the 22-23 budget for this year. So just a little bit about the community engagement efforts, just sort of the process that we've gone through, and then I'll hone in a little bit on the detail as what was discussed in those community engagement efforts. So the community engagement process began for this project last October and November with assembling a focus group of community veterans. So we asked for nominations from the council, and we also posted sort of an open invitation on social media soliciting feedback from veterans. And we just asked those to serve on this focus group. So we wanted as much participation as possible. This was a very open-ended invitation. You didn't necessarily have to be a veteran to participate. Everyone that was recommended to us was contacted. So we wanted to obtain citizen input up front so that we could bring you a recommendation. So the first feedback from this first focus group was used to provide direction to our design consultant, Olson Studio. Once the feedback was delivered, conceptual designs were prepared, and members of the original focus group reconvened at that March 31st date to view the concepts, and they landed on one they liked during that meeting. The Parks and Recreation Board then was able to receive an update on the entire process thus far. They, again, reviewed the same concepts that the focus group reviewed. They heard the same presentation from our consultant, and they also recommended the same design concept. So just focusing a little bit more on what was discussed during the community engagement process. So we began by viewing examples, the focus group began by viewing examples of veterans memorials in other communities. So we had a slideshow there of a lot of our surrounding communities' memorials. During this process, a lot of feedback flowed from that. Some of the veterans mentioned that they would like to stay away from listing names of veterans on either granite columns or pavers. That was very interesting feedback for us to hear. It was very important to them that all 6 branches of the military would be represented and be represented in the correct order. That was also very informative for us. So our memorial will represent the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and the Space Force, which, as a side note, we're pretty positive in our research that we would be the very first memorial to honor the Space Force. So that's kind of exciting. So there was a lot of discussion on the desire and the need for flags, both the American flag, the flags representing the military branches. Obviously, in doing those, providing the appropriate lighting for any memorial or flag, of course. And then the desire for additional seating or seating elements so that anybody could come and sit and reflect in the space. Interactive elements and storytelling was a big discussion. So the group had some really incredible stories that they shared in the focus groups, and we knew that we had to capture those. So our plan as of now is to be able to capture those on our website and update them frequently. And so we can do this by having a QR code on either signage or near the memorial, which will link to a web page with education and stories. So we're really excited about that option. And then there was locations that were discussed during the first focus group meeting. So the location of the area right here behind Town Center, known as the Town Center Plaza, was discussed, as was Andy Brown Park East. So some of the discussion about Andy Brown East talked about, hey, there's more visibility, we have a lot going on over here, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on the memorial. But it also left the group feeling like placing it at east felt too much like an afterthought for them, that it wasn't where it belonged and that it felt out of place. So after further group discussion, the focus group landed on Town Center Plaza as their desired preferred location for that group. So the things that they liked about the plaza were the size. The infrastructure is already in place, so there's potential for expansion or addition of the plaza memorial space as time goes on. What they really liked the most was the ability to rededicate the entire Town Center Plaza as a Veterans Plaza. The Town Center Plaza has a lot of, again, infrastructure already in place that helps with the project budget. And then the discussion talked about accessibility for those with limited or impaired mobility. It's close, it's accessible to parking. And then it also has proximity to the Fallen Officers Memorial and is currently the site of our 9/11 ceremonies here at this building. So overall, the feedback received was that the veterans really liked the idea of an entire area that is dedicated for this purpose to be a standalone Veterans Plaza with room to have both quiet remembrance areas and a place to honor military branches. So this focus group feedback from this group was then created, used to create the scope for Olson Studio. So then after that, Park Board, of course, received the same feedback. They achieved consensus on the same conceptual design and also recommended the Town Center Plaza location.
I've got a question. This is what happens when you get surprised. Why did the consensus not want names on the monuments?
So I'm glad you asked that. So the conversation turned to unfortunately, the extremely high rates of veteran suicide. So PTSD, post-military service, that a lot of the veterans, one particular veteran in the group is in a larger group of DFW veterans. They meet a lot frequently, and they said they're just wanting to get away from listing names because it's just impossible to keep up with. So that was in the room really latched on to that as they were in agreement that they didn't want to do names.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to turn it over to Samit Patel with Olson Studio, and he's going to walk you through the conceptual design selected by the focus group and recommended by Park Board.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to Council for allowing me the opportunity to present this design to you. Copies of the plan are being passed around so you can look at it as I walk through it. So as Jessica mentioned, it was the area behind Town Hall, this existing park that was there that was really excited the group as an opportunity to house, be the home for this future space dedicated to our service people, both past and present and future. What was nice about this space was, as she mentioned, the infrastructure was already there, and the grandeur and the specialness, I know it's not a real word, just felt like that wanted to be here. And there are some design opportunities with this that create some dramatics and a really nice experience as to it. So I will walk you through the plan, and then I will walk you through a short video loop of the experience at a ground level. So off to the left of the plan is our main parking in front of City Hall. That's where we anticipate most of the people parking and coming to the space. They would walk along on the north of the building and plan left, and then just to the south west of City Hall.
Sorry, it's
Yep, no problem. South of City Hall is the main walkway to the park space, the plaza space in the back. When you get there, you will see the American flag right off the corner of City Hall, and we've taken that existing group of trees, what's that design term, a bosque, we'll extend that to the parking lot so that as you're walking up, you have a nice tree-lined walk experience with a sign to welcome you to bring you to the back. Once you turn that corner, you will then see the monument, and let me see if I can make this work. So that's the view from the parking lot as you walk up, I hope.
There's going to be a little bit of a delay.
Okay. So you'll see the sign off to the right, the tree-lined walkway will come with you, and as you walk to the back, the flagpole is positioned in what was the water feature. So we'll go ahead and cap that water feature. Do I need to, please?
One more time, just please.
There we go. That will cap that water feature so that it becomes a presentation platform color. As you come to the corner of the building and you turn and look across the plaza, you will see the presentation of the monuments and the service flags. And that brings you into the park space. It's up on a slight hill, so it gets a really nice view, and those monuments could be anywhere from 8 to 10 foot tall, depending on how we develop that design opportunity there, and front and back. So there'll be recognition, some type of medal or medallion or something on the front and back of it, so you can take pictures with the flags behind you or with the US flag. You get an opportunity to walk through this corridor and experience each one of the services. As you walk through, you can stop, take pictures, and see the space. As we come past into the raised area that's existing right now, we come upon the battlefield cross, as it would be seen in the field amongst the trees as soldiers are fallen in place and this memorial is placed on. This becomes our reflective zone where you separate yourself from the open public space that you can sit and remember with stone benches. Of course, we have picnic tables and whatnot that will be displaced from that elevated area, which is why we extended the trees to continue to allow this space to serve the daily employees that come out here often to walk and to sit at lunch and gather. And many of the employees within all the buildings surrounding here are veterans, so it becomes a special place for them on a daily basis, along with people who walk through the park on a regular basis, and then hopefully more people come to this park and people come to engage. I hope that didn't go too fast, but I can go back to the plan if we'd like, or we can hold it right here and talk about this a little bit more if you'd like.
So the plan that you showed us shows the American flag sitting.
So one of the suggestions out of the focus group was to move, instead of putting the flag at that center, move it to the end so that it could be seen in the walk-up to draw people to the back. What that also did is it allowed that platform area to serve as a stage unobstructed. There is also, we were sitting in the upstairs conference room, and the flag would actually block the view of the space from that conference room. Now, not everybody is there, but it was like, let's do that, but it felt more dramatic to the group, which is why they suggested we move this over to this side. And in our other concept that we had presented to them, that was on the side, and so it was an opportunity for us to talk that through.
Kevin?
I was just going to ask, so on the plan here, it says temporary flag locations / ceremonial. So is the desire to have the flags permanently displayed?
So those flags that you're seeing there would be a permanent display of the flags.
Okay.
During a ceremony, if colors are presented, or there's a need for showcasing additional flags or something, that gets presented on that platform.
Okay. Thank you.
I may have missed this, but I'll ask the question anyway. Why are we getting rid of the water feature?
So the water feature, we've had it drained for the last couple of years. It was a very strong maintenance challenge. So we had a lot of people that would use it as a waiting area and a swimming area, and it just wasn't a safe option. And so we will, no matter if this happens here or not, we will be addressing
The water feature, okay. Just curious. Thank you.
I was going to ask the same question.
Okay, yeah, I understand. I mean, I've seen it stop, but then I've seen it going, and I just remember when it was put there, and someone who's gone and had the idea of having it there, so.
John?
Was that the only, I guess, design that's been presented to
The
the
group
focus
has
group?
been presented 2 designs. And this was, they actually really liked both, but in the end, there was consensus on this design. And similarly with the Parks Board, we purposely did not share with them what the focus group had preferred. And much of their discussion was very similar, and in the end, preferred this also, and then we revealed to them that the focus group also preferred this design.
So, one of the concerns that I had initially, that I spoke about was the location, right? The location where not just the resident, but also we could have kids visit and to kind of, pass on the history. And that was the main thing. I think I mentioned that many of the veteran plaza that I visited is always isolated in a place where you have to go out of your way and there's really not that much of a traffic. I understand that it's right behind the city hall and that the employees might, will enjoy that, but my concern is still the same, that is that a location where the residents and the children are not gonna be really, and plus, I had also mentioned about if we had it somewhere where there's events, for sure we would have not just the veterans, but also, make it a place where even out-of-town visitors want to come and visit. So that's been my concern about this. You did a great job, putting the video and all that together. And then we've gotten a number of emails talking about, they don't want it at a place where children are not going to be visiting that much, right? And this is part of it. There's a number of other locations the cities have, Veterans Memorial, right? Like, for example, Plano has one. They have a great one, actually. And they've actually featured throughout the park. They have, but it's kind of remote in an area that not too many people visit. So that's one of their issue with them too. McKinney, he talked about the veterans didn't want the engraving names. I'm fine, that's fine. But they also they also had themes of talking about what wars, the veterans served, patriotism themes and other things. But they also have fountains and monuments, right? Carrollton has it a place where it's near the senior center. However, the only reason why they attract some people is because they have a trail plus the water. And that makes it a little better in the sense for people to come. But this is I understand you're going to be dedicating that one location as a memorial plaza, which is great. But it's again at a location where not too many people are going to be visiting, especially with the children. So that's my concern. And I'm going to go back to the emails that we've been getting. They all wanted at a place where residents, out-of-towners, are going to be able to bring their children and be able to talk about the history of, the wars and veterans. So did we take into consideration, or I've gotten some emails with some of the, I guess, Mr. Phil LaBarge. He actually presented some of the location, and it looked great too, just similar to this, right? So I'm just wondering if we've taken those into consideration and what was...
Yeah, so just remember, this evening is the recommendation from the group that y'all helped appoint.
Sure.
And from the Parks Board. So they're not in a position to speak to, did they consider anything else, because the recommendations came from the group based on the discussion they had about Andy Brown. So if y'all want to decide to do something different, that's, asking them is not going to help, because they're presenting to you what the recommendation is. They took into account Andy Brown East, right? So just to help with the discussion, if the group says, you know what, we like this, but we would like you to consider some other things, that's the direction that we would need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I'm asking, did we actually take into consideration or hear about the proposal about Andy Brown? Did we even look at that? That's what I'm asking.
Sure, if I could help just a little bit, just a couple of your comments. So we're talking about the children and the education piece. Part of what the focus group covered, they were excited that it backed right up to Town Center Elementary, that there's kids playing on that playground that are going to view those flags every single day, that they could see the kids coming out and coming around to the plaza and taking a field trip there. So I just want, that was discussed in the notes there. They were really excited about that idea, and that would generate, if Town Center Elementary was to do that, all the other elementaries would follow suit, and we could have an educational speakers and things out there for the school. So that was an element of the group as well. And then in terms of the Andy Brown East discussion, again, that was brought up in focus group 1. The veterans at the table, actually, we have achieved 100% consensus at focus group 1 that they preferred the plaza location. So that's how we created Olson's scope there. It wasn't until the second focus group, when we were reviewing the conceptual designs, that Mr. LaBerge had presented, oh my gosh, why don't we think about, I like East better, why don't we look at East? And so at that point, we were already slated to go to Park Board on April 3rd, 3 days later, and so there was no time to take into account additional designs, knowing that it was going to go to the board. And we have Nick Pascal, our Park Board Chair, with us tonight as well, if we need any insight from Parks and Recreation Board as well.
Kevin, did you?
I did have my hand up. Yeah, I was just kind of wanted to speak to kind of what John was talking about. I feel like it's kind of a tricky balance because, we do have this council appointed focus group, if you will, that, was tasked to do this, and we all had a hand in recommending people and selecting people to do that. So while we did get emails on that, I want to make sure that we don't just throw out their recommendations based on the fact that we've received some emails. So while I know we have the final say, I do want to make sure that we respect the process in the sense that, we did select, we did recommend people, they did come together, that they seems like they had consensus on the first
100%.
What did you call it? The meeting?
The focus group.
The first focus group meeting, but then something happened. I don't know, maybe, do you have any insight on what happened between that first and second focus group that?
No, I do not. It was one participant in the focus group had just sent an email after the fact going, hey, never mind, we should be looking over here.
Okay.
But by then, the scope had been created. We were already engaged in conceptual design for this location. So that's for focus group 1, feedback was used to create the scope for the consultant.
And to be clear, that member, that person that kind of went and said, hey, we should look at this, they were on board on the first focus group.
Correct.
But then something in between decided to change the mindset or whatever the thought process is. Okay.
I suppose, because after focus group 1, that individual sent me additional design options for the plaza, which were then transferred to the consultant at that time. So the additional designs that came from that participant for Andy Brown East came too late. The conceptual design phase had.
But I'm assuming, I'm gonna jump out on a limb here and say that because there was consensus on the first focus group, that's why I went ahead and engaged that design process and went there. So, okay.
Correct.
That, understanding that whole timeline is helpful, and, why we have this
Sure.
beautiful rendering and stuff like that. So, that's just my concern, is while I do respect the emails that we received, I want to make sure we also respect the process that we kind of agreed that we would follow on that, so, or at least recommended people for. Those are my thoughts.
John?
Regardless of this space or another space, is there any thought that it sort of limits us using this space for anything else? I mean, does it become such not a solemn area, but such a area dedicated to this purpose that you really can't do, neighbors helping neighbors or whatever else out in that space?
That's a great question. That was discussed. The use of the space was discussed at length. Honestly, today, this space is not currently activated. It's not on our special event schedule, and I'll tell you why. It's for a good reason. We outgrew the space. Okay. So we used to have, if you'll recall, our December holiday event, our tree lighting. Mm-hmm. We completely exceeded the max capacity of the Town Center Plaza, and that's when it shifted over to East. And so this space has not been activated, and so this would be a way to breathe life into the space again. Okay, well that's
I mean, not that you couldn't use it for other things, but I didn't want it to be perceived as disrespectful if all of a sudden we're doing
correct.
something
so,
else
well, then conversely,
in this space or at East.
Conversely, that's the issue I think with East as well.
It's used for a number of other things
correct.
Besides just this dedicated purpose. Yeah.
I think there was energy around when Samit discussed the remembrance zone that's in the raised area. They like the solemn, dedicated space as truly to sit and reflect, and there was discussion about that not being capable at East with a bike whizzing by and things like that. That was just the notes from the focus group. Sure.
So one intriguing discussion point to that effect at the first focus group was memorial and remembrance versus celebration and plaza space, which is why the focus group latched on to calling it a plaza instead of just a memorial. And what we tried to achieve in the design was a balance of where can we come and celebrate our service members and the forces, but also remember. And the balance, and that's why we created a space within the trees to step away from the public space to be able to remember. It becomes an emotional step, even though you're still open and visible, but it becomes an emotional step into that space to remember and reflect, and anybody can do that how they wish. And in the larger space, I do agree, it becomes more service and veterans and community type celebrations that can happen here, as opposed to maybe Christmas tree lighting and things like that. But I think there's more opportunity to then create more of those kind of civic events, public events.
Jessica, would this be something like the 9/11 service? I mean, it was the idea, at least conceptually, it would get moved to this space?
Yeah, so 9/11 takes place on the front side of the
side,
building,
yeah.
and so I think creating this as a true gathering plaza, I think the 9/11 ceremony, I haven't talked to Chief Richardson about this yet,
Right.
that would be
But
the
that-
discussion to have with him later after the fact. But I think that it would be appropriate to move it here as well.
Yeah, well, it does seem, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer for sure, but that having this dedicated space, because this really is a little bit more expansive than I probably had in my own mind. And I mean, it's really, at least the video is quite beautiful. I know that's conceptual at this point, but it's taking that whole plaza and sort of making it something instead of, quite frankly, I thought it was going to be something in the plaza, it wasn't going to be the plaza. So, so having it at East or something, it seems like it might get a little bit lost with everything else going on at East, was my initial thought, but.
So I know that when I go to, a Veterans Memorial like in Washington DC, or there's a Battle of the Alamo down in San Antonio, those are very, very special places for me. And I was a little concerned about the location. And I honestly thought it was going to be behind the obelisk. I thought it was going to be in that walk area back there.
Yeah.
And I was a little concerned that this is completely unexpected, but it's beginning to grow on me. I am concerned that if you put a very solemn location, and to me this is a very solemn structure or place, putting it in a park, just there seems to be a bit of a incongruous element there. Although, granted, there probably would be more people walking by, but when someone's trying to reflect on something, having a soccer game or a frisbee match going on outside seems to be a little bit of a mismatch.
Sorry, the second play of this video is jumping around a little bit.
That's okay. I got it. This is not what I was expecting, but it's I got to admit, creative. Mark, you're the architect. What do you?
I'm with you guys. It's not what I expected. It's interesting. I thought we were going to come back from the focus group with kind of programmatic requirements. A location, maybe kind of an idea of what the preliminary budget might be, and then go out and have some conceptual design done. I had actually in my mind, I wanted to suggest that there be a regional competition. As a young architect in college, I actually took part in the Vietnam Memorial competition. And it was very exciting. And, if you've ever been there, it's not at all what you would have expected. This came from a young woman who went to Yale, who was just a student, not a design, full-fledged design professional. I think she was in her second or third year. And I don't want to try to put this the right way. This is kind of the limited vision of one design firm that we're seeing. And I think that we could see possibly, don't know for sure, something that's much more dynamic or could fit the context of this area if this is where we wanted to have it placed. The feedback that we got from the committee, or if the committee says, well, let's try to dedicate this area, and they lay out the parameters that, it's going to be all the divisions of the military, here's a rough budget of, X $1,000, X $1 million, whatever it is, and, give a prize that, it would be worthwhile for someone to spend their time on, and they would work with a local architect to do the actual construction documents. But that was just kind of what I was thinking. Now, we never had any kind of discussions like that, so, shame on me for not mentioning it and probably thinking how far the committees were going to go on these things. Because I didn't know they were actually going to put pen to paper. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh,
There was a hand down.
So I saw him pointing at you, and I looked over there. And, okay.
You're like, yeah, she's here. Ditto, ditto, ditto. Very well said. First of all, thank you. Thank you for putting this together. I didn't know what to expect, so it's at least good to see an idea that's out there, a recommendation. I think I will agree with, I think the mayor said this, he's like, I'm still processing it, and I think Mark was in saying, not really what, Councilmember Hill, sorry, not really what we were expecting, but again, I think them the same way. I didn't know what to expect. And, thinking about when this area was created really wasn't that long ago, and what the vision was for that part of town center, because we were like, this is the front of town center,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so thinking through that again, and then having the sundial and the, we've got a time capsule in there, and so I just, there was so much around that was about new beginnings and celebration, and this obviously makes it a place of reflection and respect and something different. So, Mark, I really like your idea of of opening this up, because there are things and ideas that we may never have even imagined. So I love that, and I want to see something at some point, and I think it'd be great to be a part of that, but I'm struggling with the location, I think, and I can't really articulate why. But I think it's because I was part of what that was all about when it was first created, right? And so, that's not to say it's not where it's gonna land. I love that it's by the school. It provides an opportunity. A lot of people come and walk there. I will tell you, I think the other thing that is maybe a positive, it does end up here, we also have our police memorial close by in proximity. So being able to bring that
Heavy
together.
discussion amongst the focus group.
Perfect, so that brings it all together, and that one was up. So anyway, all that to say is, I know they're looking for direction today. I don't know that I'd love to know what direction exactly, because I don't know that I'm ready to give direction right now. So.
BG?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jessica, for the presentation. So I'm looking at the April 11, the tidbits that we got, and there were 8 names listed there as part of the focus group. So my questions are based on the process. How did we advertise to get people to the focus group?
So we put it out on social media. It went out as a social media post. We actually did that on Veterans Day last year to capitalize on Veterans Day. That was a post saying we're going to be building a memorial. We'd love to have veteran input, feedback. So we received some names through just filling out a form on the website that they were interested, and then we also asked council for recommendations. I know y'all are all very well connected with members of the community and those that have served, so we received a lot of names from you all. Every single person that was given to us was contacted, and so I did have a couple of phone calls with an additional veteran who could not make both focus groups, but got his input.
So that's on February 23rd, 8 people gathered for the focus group.
Yes, and then I had a call with Mark Smith that afternoon,
Right.
so I consider him as part of the focus group.
Okay, sure. On March 31st, when the focus group came back, looking at some designs, how many people attended that?
We had 4.
So 4
About half.
people
Mhm.
reviewed the design, 2 designs that he did,
Mhm.
and 4 people recommend one of them.
Mhm. Yes.
And that was the recommendation presented to the park board.
Park Board, no, Park Board saw the exact same presentation that the focus group saw on March 31st. So they saw the same 2 designs, heard the same presentation, and they were not told which design the focus group picked, and then the Parks and Recreation Board had their own discussion, which, as Simit had mentioned, it mirrored the focus group pretty closely, and a lot of the same things you all said here this evening were said there as well.
So from the 8, we cut to 4 for the second focus group.
So 9 and 5, because again, Mark Smits, I had 2 phone calls with him after each focus group session as well.
Okay.
Yep. And then it went to the Parks and Recreation Board, advertised to the public as well.
How many names did you get from the council?
I have that spreadsheet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 14 names from the council, 1 submitted via the website. And then we also had 2 park board members as well that were a subcommittee assignment of the park board to participate in this process as well.
John?
So Jessica, if we were to even entertain the idea of a design at Andy Brown, what would it take?
Let me go to this next slide. So next steps would be, if we achieved some direction here tonight, to begin the process of preparing bid documents to entertain construction of this memorial. Concurrently, staff would be working on, again, if Town Center Plaza was the selected location, we'd be planning for a rededication of that space to a Veterans Plaza. So we'd focus on that renaming ceremony as well as a new Veterans Day ceremony, just what that would look like. So that would be in the plan for 2023. Then we'd be back to you guys to award construction at a future council meeting. So that would be next steps for.
I think his question was what, if it went to Andy Brown?
I'm sorry, state your question again.
Yeah, my question was, the design at Andy Brown, what would it take to
Okay.
get?
Yes, so if it went to Andy Brown, if we wanted to entertain some designs there, I've discussed that option already with Samit. We could, within our current scope of our contract, entertain maybe a couple of additional designs. We would propose that if we were to do that, that we would start the community engagement process completely over. Again, I think y'all touched on it, we have a pretty engaged, energetic group at the focus group, so I would want to re-engage them and let them know that we're entertaining some other options and kind of get their feedback again. And then I would follow the same path, go back to the Parks and Recreation Board with new feedback, and then bring a new recommendation to you all.
Would the design change so much if if the location was different?
It depends. I think we go back to the focus group for more discussion on that. Samit would be present for that as well. It really depends on locations within East. So there are a couple things we haven't yet talked about. There are some things at Andy Brown East that are already identified for future development based on the Parks and Recreation project priority list. So there's already some areas that we would technically not consider at East due to the fact that they're already proposed for future development.
Can you?
One would be the
That was what?
arrival court, so the oval area, the far south end of the park, closest to the parking lot. So it's that circular area just south of the Grand Pavilion. Based on public input, that from our last master plan process, the community would like to see a large splash pad in town at some point. So that's been prioritized as a high priority on the park board list for probably 3 years now, Nick. And so that oval area was the desired location by park board to place a splash pad at some point in the future, once funding became available.
Is this similar to the one at Old Town, but
So
right
that
next to the core?
That one's an interactive fountain, so it's technically not a true splash pad. The input we received from our last master plan was the community wanted an actual splash pad. So you're gonna see more like a playground type elements. They're colorful. They're almost like a playground that shoot water out instead of just a concrete fountain. So it'd be covered. So we get a lot of feedback now about the desire for that.
Okay.
And the Parks and Recreation Board has heard that for a while. So they've had that prioritized as a high priority.
And we're putting it right next to the core. That was the whole idea of.
I think the Parks and Recreation, the discussion with them is that's the desired location. It's next to a playground, it's next to parking, it's next to restrooms. The infrastructure is in place, that it can easily be shaded. Everything would be there. And we're lacking available space around town for things like that as well, so.
Okay. And then what other locations are already?
So that's the one that's future development. So beyond that, we'd be looking then at placing the memorial somewhere down into the park. And that's where I had mentioned earlier, the focus group had talked about accessibility concerns with limited mobility. Folks that use walkers and wheelchairs were concerned about getting too deep into the park. Definitely something we can overcome. We would just need to be very careful because, again, the park is activated for many different events. We put a lot of infrastructure into the park. In fact, for Celebrate Coppell, to load in that stage, we pull an entire 18-wheeler down into the park and back it in directly in front of our performance pavilion. So there's a lot of just nuances to where we would place a memorial just based on how the park was built to be used.
Kevin?
Two questions. So, I know one of the designs we got was placing the memorial down in the park. I mean, that's floodplain area.
It is, so.
And so I guess maybe, I'm concerned about that is like putting memorial down there and then we have flooding like we did in 2015.
Yes.
What would that do to the memorial?
Correct. So all of Andy Brown East is in a floodplain. It is meant to flood. So those surrounding homes do not flood. And so that's why you don't see a lot of other existing infrastructure down into what we call the peanut shape of the park. Because that is meant to flood. It has flooded since, in the last probably 2015 flood. I'm looking at Mike Garza. And so that's a real concern down there as well. That's why you don't see a lot of infrastructure down there.
And the second part of my question was, do we have, based on this design that was presented to us, do we have like an estimated budget or like cost of what this is looking like?
So the costs that have been discussed, both I think during your budget workshop time and that have been discussed with the CRDC board is around the $350,000 range, which is very, very small. And so that was one of the factors playing in with the plaza that was maximizing that budget put in place there.
Okay. This might be a wild shot in the dark on this, but obviously we received many emails like we talked about earlier. Is there any idea like the scope of a memorial or something like on that? Would that be about the same cost? Like let's say that we utilize that area down in the park. Is there any way to say like, is that about the same amount? Would it be more?
It just depends. The design will drive the cost. Okay. Truly. There's still a lot of unknowns, even with the design of the plaza. There's a lot of, because it's still being in conceptual phase. We don't have materials selected. Is it granite? Is it stone? There's a lot of things that drive cost. Lighting, things running electricity, those things drive up the cost that aren't necessarily in this scope here with a conceptual design.
And I guess last question on this is, based on, I'm assuming that we were able to control a lot of the costs because of the existing infrastructure that is already in place behind Town Center. So that helps us be a little bit more conservative with the budget because of everything that's there.
Right.
Okay, so it's probably safe to say that if we went somewhere else that did not have as much infrastructure, the price tag would go up. And while I want to make sure that we give our veterans the respect and, give this memorial the dignity it deserves, ultimately, we do have to make sure that we watch out for the cost of the overall project, so.
Sure.
All right, thank you for that feedback, I
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
appreciate that.
So, as we stated, Jessica's really needing some direction. And she's offered a couple of things. Mark, I think your suggestion about looking into some type of design competition would be something fair to send back to them.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm ready to give direction, after, seeing this. I think it takes a little while to digest, and then, the feedback that we're getting, contrary to these recommendations from the committee. It's kind of up in the air here as to what kind of direction to give them.
Well, I heard Jessica say that they could reconvene the focus groups to reestablish basically to kind of take a look at other options and, leave both what we've heard tonight on the table. So that's a very doable thing that we can ask her to do. John?
It is a great presentation. Like they said, it was more than I expected. Great. It's just the location that I'm still concerned about. And I would like to at least hear what designs are possible at other locations, particularly Andy Brown, that thought of the email that we got. At least look into it and see what's possible. And I understand about the cost-wise, could be a little different depending on the design. And I understand your concern about flooding, but the structures are there too, and I mean, it's supposed to withstand whatever that we put in there, right? So I would imagine that we're not gonna put something there just when it floods, that it's gonna just crumble.
I just think it's probably something we need to consider with the
Right.
budget, like we.
For example, like a flagpole would not withstand a flood, something like that, and lighting, like in-ground lighting, those are the things that might not, but like a granite column would
Sure.
surely.
So, and again, those are things I think you would take into consideration before when you come up with the design, but.
Yeah, that'll be all part of the program.
Right. So
If
at
you're
least-
building a floodplain, you have to do materials that can,
Right.
withstand some water for a day or two.
But I would at least like to see what designs are possible, alternative, they're, kind of sort of say, right? I'd like to see that. Again, because I hear what they're saying, and that is exactly the same concern same thing that I said at the beginning, which is I don't want to put a place where, not too many people visit, and it is the history that we want to pass down. And I get the concern about, it's a nice place behind all that, but at the same time, we also, again, I'm not saying that put it there, but if it was at Andy Brown, all the event that does happen, it does give an opportunity for the veterans to attend, to be able to kind of show, whether it's a seating or whatever that you put in there, whether it's a seating for the veterans or the disabled seatings, it is an opportunity for them to enjoy all the event that does happen at Andy Brown. So that's another reason that that.
Sure. Yeah, the same thing. I just wanted to share the exact feedback from the focus group, what was said. I'm sure I didn't cover everything. We have a few other folks in the room that were there as well, but a lot of the same discussion that y'all were having was had at the focus group level as well, and Mark Ward.
Did you?
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, if we were to advance your suggestion, having a regional competition, you thinking about the students from the college or residents from Coppell? Or
I think you open it up to everybody, but you would, I think particularly, send it out to.
Architecture and landscape architecture.
Yeah. I mean, just a regional, and there's tons of, landscape architects and architects that would just be interested in doing the design just for fun, as something for their, creative expression.
So that also applies for location as well?
Well, I think that's something that the committee and us around this table need to figure out. Because I think that's got to be part of the program, that we give the people and the constraints. So. I
They
think
know what
it's-
they're working with.
Yeah,
I also think it's fair for us to maybe, I don't know, maybe we need to look at what kind of budget we want to set for this versus allowing the
Yes.
project to determine the budget itself, because, I mean, if, let's say that we land on a price tag of $500,000 and we go say, we'll go put it down in Brown, and well, it's not feasible, or for $500,000, you only get this, and we want scope of this. I think that we need to make sure that we have a thoughtful discussion on what type of resources we want to put behind this, and so.
absolutely.
Well, we did have that discussion at the workshop, and that was where the 350,000 came from. So if it's, you know, if you want to address that, that's perfectly fine.
I mean, basically what we're kind of gathering is this is what 350 will get us about.
Yeah. John?
And it's-
I'm gonna follow up what Kevin said. You know, 350,000, fine. If that's what you worked on, that's fine, but at the same time, I don't know what Andy Brown would have been, or what other option, or other than what we had here, what other option, what it would have cost. But I would rather look into it and then, I'm gonna give an example. Do it right in the first time rather than go back and do it almost like the dog park, right? Do it, spend the money, spend the budget where we're gonna go back at some time and say, well, this is not a go-to place. Out-of-town visitors are not gonna come because it's just a regular memorial. So let's make it better. I want to avoid that if it's possible.
So typically, the way that we do programs like this is we go define the program, and then we go cost it, and at that point, we say yes or no to it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing you saying.
Yeah, so let's,
So we're still not really at a place that we can give her a go-do. I think I heard that we would like the focus group to come back together and take a look at locations. I do believe that I'm not sure, I know you're not ready to say, yeah, let's go do a design competition, because that's gonna take a while. But as part of the focus group, can we ask them to look into that? Or at least begin
Yeah, I mean,
working that direction?
certainly.
Is there-
They may be content with just working with one person.
Let the focus group give that to the focus group, that's our suggestion, but we're gonna look for them to come back with the process they wanna follow?
I do want to make sure that,
Mike?
I'm trying to think how to help you close the loop.
Yeah, I was like,
So let me make some statements, and then you can kind of thumbs up, thumbs down, however you want to do it. It sounded like there was general interest in possibly doing the competition, just general interest in the idea behind that, okay? With that understanding, and understanding that you're not prepared to make a decision, which is perfectly fine, let's all just take a step back. Our goal was Veterans Day of 2023. So we're going to take that off the table. So now we don't have Veterans Day of 2023 as a deadline, right? It was an arbitrary deadline to begin with, so we don't have that as a deadline. Knowing if you want to go in the direction of a design charrette competition type thing open to the region, and there's lots of landscape architecture and architecture schools and that type of thing in the area, so you would have a lot of variety in terms of what's happening. To your point, part of the program, your veterans, the group has already laid out some programmatic criteria, and so if there's still some discussion on what that program needs to look like, having them come back together again and inviting others to come to be part of that, the program is irrespective of the location, right? I mean, in terms of what's going on, that's how that works. So then you get to this location issue. At the end of the day, whether you have and I don't think we should ask our consultant to go do design work on something at Andy Brown, or back in the back, or some other location, because I think if you're committed, that's what I'm trying to hear, if you're committed to doing this competition, asking them to do any additional work would be inappropriate, right, in terms of the dollar spent and the time spent for the firm. But having us have a little bit more public input, especially since we don't have this pressure of time on us, there's a way for us to do that. And we can have multiple meetings and have that kind of input and be able to give you the input. What you have to be prepared for is still, at the end of the day, before the program goes out, which, by the way, our target would be this fall. So you'd be having it ready for this summer, so the fall semester's ready to go. And that gives the teachers and the professors an opportunity to put it out in front of them. And then a lot of times, if I remember my design school, there's like a 101 and 102. There's a second semester, which is in the spring, which was when they could be doing the presentations and everything, which is plenty of time for you to put together what you want to do as far as the program, the location, the budget. So we would walk ourselves through the next 3 or 4 months, time-wise, so that this would be a topic of discussion. For example, at your council retreat and the weekend between the 19th, May the 19th, May the 20th, this could be part of a topic of discussion. And then if you need some additional time, which I'm sure you will, you have opportunities in June and July, because we meet a lot in July, that you could have this as part of the discussion. But at the end of the day, y'all are going to be in a position where you are going to say, here's the program, here's the location, here's the budget. And then we take it and run with it and put it together so that we get it out to the universities and the public. Am I summarizing that correctly?
There's one piece I just want to make sure, I want to make sure that we don't lose the feedback that we've already received from our
Focus group.
focus group.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
And
I just want to make sure that stays
I
in
think
the
that's what
essence
she said.
of-
She could pull them back together again and say, here's the questions the council had, and here's some of the things that they asked, and here's some of the things that
Yeah.
they're now asking you, now that they have a better understanding, right? You can go back to them and you can say, now that they have a better understanding, here's some things that they'd like to look at.
Yeah.
Which you didn't give that to them, focus 1 and focus 2,
We gave them a blank sheet of
Yeah,
paper.
that's
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
Said, hey, we want, and they started great with the program, right, in terms of what's going on.
I just want to make sure that we respect their contribution.
Yeah, no,
And
Yeah.
if we do, we take the thoughtfulness and the discussion they had and, look at incorporating that into like the design criteria.
Right.
So I just want to make sure we don't lose that piece of what they've already contributed.
I'm sorry, Don is
Don.
on there waving.
Oh, yeah, he does things over here. So.
He was not putting up a peace sign behind him.
I guess I want to make sure if we do go a different direction, because it seems like we did give a budget and a blank piece of paper and citizen engagement, and we went and did all that, and it sounds like we don't like what we see. That's what I'm hearing, is we don't like what we have here. So I guess I want to make sure that, like, if we have a competition or anything else, like, who's going to make the decision on what's acceptable? It's not going to go back through the citizen focus groups and then come back to us and we're going to say, no, we still don't like that, are we? Because
As part of the program, it'll define who the decision, if you put a committee together that is going to make the recommendation to the council. I don't know what the answer is, but at the end of the day, you ultimately, the council, are going to thumbs up whatever it is that's done.
well, okay.
But you're gonna have somebody, Mark, you're better at this than I am as far as the design competitions, but somebody does, there is a review committee. There is a group of people.
So is Jessica is it your task to put together the plan?
I don't know. I think I would like Councilmember Hill as a consultant to assist me with this process.
And do we need to budget another $100,000, $200,000 for all this plan to happen or whatever?
I think what we need to do is kind of like what,
I'm talking about just for the design. 'Cause
We've
we're
got some
not-
research to do. Again, this is y'all getting directions.
Yeah.
If this is where y'all would like us to go, let us take that as the steps that you want, and then
they'll come back.
come back and say, here's what the calendar looks like, and here's what suggestions are in terms of who's doing what, when, and how, right?
Okay.
We don't have those answers tonight.
Okay, I wanna make sure.
And,
that-
and by the way, so from my perspective, I didn't hear that y'all say that you didn't like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to make sure well, I don't want our group to go back and hear that, right, in terms of, because it's just
But
that you want
that's what I'm
something.
perceiving.
Yeah,
That's what I'm perceiving.
Yeah, I'm just
from
hearing
the
something
group.
different.
I guess I'm confused because I felt like we gave direction of what to do, and we now have a result, but we don't like the result.
You have a recommendation, but that's what we're hearing is,
But we
we're
don't like
hearing
the
that, right, you have the
But there's-
recommendation.
okay.
It's just like, here's the deal,
Okay,
it's
but
just
that-
like Parks Board makes a recommendation for doing something, or P and Z makes a recommendation for doing something. At the end of the day, it gets in front of y'all, and, you know, it's like, okay, well, we've thought about it, we've heard some additional information, you've gotten some additional input, and we'd like to explore, that's what I hear, you'd like to
Okay.
explore beyond,
Options.
we respect and appreciate what the input's been from everybody, so let us explore this some more.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine.
And we're not constrained now to the,
What's that?
then now we're not constrained to the deadline of,
Right, I mean, this was, the timing
Yeah,
was to
agreed.
get us to a point, and that was a little bit of a driver. So
Yeah.
now that you take that pressure point off, it's like, okay,
yeah.
we've got multiple months now to work with y'all, be in dialogue with the council. Like I said, in 3 weeks, we'll be before y'all, and we can talk more about this process.
I think it's great if we get additional input or ideas. I just don't, I don't want us to all come back together a year from now and be sort of in the same boat of like, well, we don't like this either. Or, you know, whatever the next recommendation is. I mean, I guess I want to make sure we have,
You're gonna help with
An
the
end
clarity,
game.
right, you're gonna help define the clarity.
And the other thing is, a schedule will allow us to be informed as we go along. I mean, quite honestly, this thing only kicked off in February, and it was supposed to be finished in November, so that doesn't give a whole lot of, I mean, you've got to be able to delegate and say, yes, go do, and that's what we did, and so now we're rethinking that.
okay.
You're being nimble.
John?
I was ready to go tonight.
So, all I'm gonna say is, you never know. When you take it back to the focus group and even throw the idea about Andy Brown, they might say, you know what, at the end of the day, this is better. Or, this location is better, and let's just do improvise or change a little bit. If that's what they come back with, then that's fine. But it sounds like, from the email that we got, that's not really the ideal location. Maybe they initially thought, I don't know, like you said, I don't know what changed. I don't know what changed, but something changed, and they felt that a different location is better. They might come back and say, you know, ultimately, this is the location. I don't know. If that's the case, the process, like you said, then that'll be it. And we might still be on the schedule, I don't know. But at least the idea
I
came
can
out.
tell you right now, we're not on.
Probably not, yeah, probably not, yeah. Well,
Not
especially with an
budgeted.
art contest, then, the design contest, no. But at the end of the day, the idea has been brought up about Andy Brown, alternate site, alternate design, whatever it is. And let's try to do it where we don't come back and say, you know, we should have done this way 5-10 years down the road.
Right, do you have enough?
I will follow up with city manager tomorrow, make sure we have clarity, but I do believe I have enough. I just want to close by saying thank you for the feedback, and at the end of the day, we're going to get a Veterans Memorial in Coppell, which was the goal,
Yes.
and that's exciting, so thank you, appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
All right, item C is receive a legislative update. Ms. Jennifer Rodriguez via Zoom.
She's having a great time.
Hi, Jennifer.
She is.
We got you. You're good.
Right.
Can you hear us okay?
I can, thank you. I'm gonna just give y'all a brief, high-level legislative update and then follow up if you have questions about specific legislation so that I can provide you the most updated, accurate feedback on specific bills. So we are at the 33-day mark. We have 33 days remaining in the regular, and I'm going to highlight regular there, legislative session. And so the work is really just getting underway with less than 5 weeks to go to resolve the budget, the leadership priorities, and then all of the other legislation that's been filed. And so a quick reminder on that, they've been working their way through more than 7,000 bills that were filed since the beginning of that period back in last November, and then that ended for the most part in March. There's been a few that are able to be filed late under certain rules. Those are usually local bills. And so, and when I say 7,000, there's more than that that's been filed, and they're not actually all going to get heard, thank goodness. But anyway, it's a lot to deal with. And so I'm gonna just give you a brief update on where the big issues currently sit, and then provide some insight into the calendar rules that apply or will imminently apply. And so that ultimately impacts the outcome of legislation, including legislation that the city of Coppell is very specifically interested in. And so first, the budget. House Bill 1 is currently in conference committee, where the differences between the House and Senate versions of the bill will be worked out by 10 legislators. We're down to 10 folks that are looking at this. That's 5 House members that are led by Appropriations Chairman Greg Bonin, and then 5 senators led by Finance Chairman Joan Huffman. And an interesting note, there are not any of those 10 members that are overseeing this process to finalize the budget. There are not any from the Metroplex on the conference committee. Not terribly surprising, given that the conference committee members are only taken from the Appropriations or Finance Committee, and then they're also usually the subcommittee chairs that land in those spots. So it's just where it ended up this session. That conference committee conducted its first meeting this morning, and so they will meet regularly, like Monday through Friday, maybe a weekend here in the next several weeks, but they're going to meet Monday through Friday to reach a consensus on the budget, and then they'll return to their respective chambers to describe those changes and then ultimately ask for a final vote before sending it to Governor Abbott. And this typically is not finalized until the last week of session, so that week before Memorial Day is when we'll probably see the budget go back to the House and Senate floor and be done with it. And just you'll recall, this is the only bill that they are constitutionally required to act on during the legislative session. And then meanwhile, there's a lot of other legislation, some good and a lot of bad, that's moving through the process. And some of those bigger issues you are likely aware of that involve priorities that are identified or have been identified by the House and Senate leadership, as well as the governor. And so early on during the legislative session, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick identified 30 legislative priorities that were ultimately filed by senators as Senate Bills 1 through 30. And all of his priorities have advanced, with many of them already referred to committees in the House. A few of them have already been heard in House committee. And this includes proposals related to things like the electric grid, education savings accounts, parental rights, higher education reform, school safety, and property tax relief. And then the House also has their own package of priority bills, a smaller number, a little over 20 bills that Speaker Dave Phelan identified as priority. Several of those issues overlap with the Senate, and then a few of them are completely different. The one big one that overlaps that we've read a lot about is property tax relief, and this was identified by Lieutenant Governor, Governor, and Speaker as something that they want to address because of the big surplus that they're facing. However, their approach to property tax relief is very different. The House is preferring an adjustment to the appraisal cap, and the Senate is focusing on an expansion of the homestead exemption. And so this issue is currently at a standstill, and failure of the legislature to pass property tax relief, considering this unprecedented budget surplus, could push this legislature into overtime. It's still too early to tell, even though there's just 5 weeks left. But there's not a lot of time left for most bills, but there's a lot of time left when we're talking about leadership bills. They can make things move very quickly, especially when they get into agreement. And so at this time, it does not appear that they're moving toward resolving this in agreement. A side note, if you go on Twitter today, there's an interesting back and forth between the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor that comes on the heels of the Lieutenant Governor referring to the Speaker as California Dade. And so the Speaker had a tongue-in-cheek response on Twitter. So y'all might want to check that out later, just give yourself a chuckle or not. But anyway, as it is right now, the House is not hearing the Senate's property tax relief bills, and the Senate is not hearing the House property tax relief bills. So again, this could quickly change. The other issue that may extend the legislative session is education savings accounts or vouchers, depending on your audience. The Senate passed an education savings account bill as part of the rights legislation package. The very same day that they passed it, across the Capitol, the House took a vote on an amendment to the House budget that effectively prohibits the expenditure of state dollars for private education. That amendment overwhelmingly passed. And so all that to say, we don't know whether there'll be a special session, but those two particular issues at this point seem to kind of pique the interest for that to maybe happen. A reminder on how that all goes down: the governor has the sole discretion to convene the legislature for a special session and the sole discretion to determine what issues they may take up when they convene. That doesn't preclude members from filing bills that are not related to the governor's special session call, but it does subject any bill that he has not specifically identified to a point of order and they don't advance. And so we've seen a trend under Governor Abbott. Whenever he convenes a special session, he'll have one or two items, and then as those items move forward and are passed, then he'll broaden it to additional items. So we kind of have a carrot metaphor going there. And then, again, no special session announced or planned at this time, just to give you a heads up that could happen. And then I wanted to kind of share with you, because we are here late in April, kind of the way a typical day is looking right now, and today is pretty typical. Various committees in both the House and Senate started convening at 8 a.m. this morning, followed by their full bodies meeting in their chambers. The House is typically at 10 a.m., the Senate at 11. They open with a prayer, the pledge, and then they spend time recognizing visitors in the gallery, passing some simple resolutions, and then they finally begin their calendar where they're debating bills. And so it's sometimes 45 minutes to an hour or more before they get started after they actually convene. And so at this point, they are spending several hours each day on the House and Senate floor. Today, the Senate wrapped up shortly after 4, the House a little bit after 5 o'clock. From there, they returned to committee meetings that did not finish this morning, or they attended a committee meeting that did not plan to start until after session. So those folks may be meeting late into tonight. And so we're also at the point in the session where some committees, and this is especially true in the House, they just aren't meeting. They finished hearing House bills, or the chair has heard all the House bills that he or she wants to, and they are waiting for Senate bills or waiting for the right kind of Senate bills. So there's several committees this week that just did not post committee meetings. Also, the other thing that we see is that a lot of committees, and this happens more so in the House, but they convene for what's called a formal meeting, and this is almost exactly opposite of what it sounds like. In a formal meeting, the committee meets in a side room off the House or Senate chambers. They could meet at their desk during a break, or they can meet elsewhere in the Capitol. It's an announced meeting, but you'll see a lot of stakeholders or lobbyists literally running to the Capitol when it's announced they're going to meet, because this is when they take up pending business. There's no public testimony allowed, and the meeting is not streamed or recorded, so they're literally crowding around and calling up bills and voting them out. A lot of things can happen during that short period of time. And we're going to see this as a more common activity here in the next few weeks before the bill deadlines set in. And so that brings me to the calendar and the end of session deadlines, and this really shapes the outcome of the legislative session for most bills. So under House and Senate rules that were approved back in January, there are deadlines built into the calendar that impact legislation. And that first major deadline falls on Monday, May 8th, and that's the last day that a House committee can report a House bill out of committee. And so in reality, if you're not reported out until May 8th, you're probably a dead bill, because from there you have to go get in line at the House calendar, the House general calendar, or the House local committee. And so that's a whole nother process. And so May 9th, which is Tuesday in 2 weeks, that's the final House calendar of general bills, not local bills, but the bulk of legislation. That last calendar will be printed, and then they will hear that on Thursday, May 11th. So we're really, House bills, if they're not pretty far along, I'd say for sure by the end of this week, but even so, right now, it's an uphill battle if you are not out of your committee and on your way to the calendars committee. And then on that particular day, May 11th at midnight, someone will go to the back mic, and they will go to midnight that day, it's guaranteed, that someone will go to the mic and raise a point of order that the bills that are on the calendar from that point forward are effectively dead because the deadline has passed. And so, a bill could still be revived as an amendment to another bill, or if there's a Senate companion that's coming over. And then just 12 days later, this process repeats with Senate bills. There's a deadline for Senate bills to be out of committee to print that last calendar, and then Tuesday, May 23rd is the deadline for Senate bills to be passed from the House. I'll stop there, and if you have questions about specific legislation, I will say real quickly, there's multiple that I've been tracking for y'all, but a few of big interests were this preemption bill, House Bill 2127. It overwhelmingly passed in the House last week and is now in the Senate, and it's been referred to committee. No action yet, but that bill is looking like it's going to head on to the governor if the Senate decides to act on it. There were 2 amendments that were taken on the House floor, and it really did not. I understand it from talking to staff in Coppell and also other interested folks that it really didn't improve the bill that much for cities. And then our specific to Coppell, the street maintenance and repair bill that Senator Johnson and Senator Parker and Representative Johnson have been helping us with, that is over in the House Ways and Means Committee. The Senate bill is there. And so I'm working to try and get that hearing. Side note, there's 28 Senate bills in Ways and Means, and only 3 of them have had hearings, and those were all heard yesterday. So we're in good company, I guess. But I'm continuing to work that, and we'll see how that plays out. There's no opposition to that. The other bill that is also coming out of the Ways and Means Committee, and of course, Mayor, you're well aware, and both there at the hearing, is the Meyer bill, House Bill 5089, the Destination and Sales Tax Bill. And so that bill actually advanced in one of those formal meetings that I mentioned last Thursday. There was a meeting at the desk by Chairman Meyer, and it was voted out. Procedurally and technically, this bill is literally between the Ways and Means Committee and the Calendars Committee. It's not actually at calendars yet. There's a lot of paperwork, and we're seeing bills, it takes from the time they're voted out, like this one was last Thursday, to it actually reaching calendars. It's taking upwards of 10 to 12 days. So when you refer back to that calendar I mentioned, a calendar by May 9th, that starts to be real serious for a bill like this. I'm gonna stop. I don't know if that was depressing, any of that, or enlightening, or a little bit of both, but.
So I'm not sure that the group has much detailed knowledge about 2127, the preemption bill. Are y'all familiar with that one? Can you give like a 30-second?
Yeah, so this one, it basically is saying that cities and counties, but definitely affects cities for the most part, that if you're not authorized by statute to regulate something, you can't. And this really, that kind of goes away from what general law cities have been able to do. There are specific codes that are identified in the bill that is where are targeted for the most part, and I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize, but starting at the beginning of the alphabet, I know the ag code was in there. Chairman Burrows is really trying to limit local ordinance powers when it comes to issues that are not allowed by state statute. So he did have to go in, he did make some changes, and even accepted, there were at least 33 amendments offered to the bills. The only one he took was his own, which was a little bit of a cleanup, and then he took one to make sure that cities could continue to regulate massage parlors, for example. But the bill is over in the Senate now. There was a companion that was heard a few weeks ago. It was left pending. So we can presume that that senator, which was Brandon Creighton out of the Woodlands, Conroe area, that he will be sponsoring the borough's bill over in the Senate. And it's before the Business and Commerce Committee. And I'm looking for, and I'll send it to Mike and staff, really a synopsis of where the bill, what it looks like now. And that will be helpful, Mayor, that maybe you can pass around.
Thank you. Just FYI, we did go down a week ago to testify against 5089. That's the destination and source-based taxing. And the morning that we got there, Morgan Myers, the chairman of the committee, who is the author of the bill, inserted a substitute bill in its place. And so basically the original bill that we were expecting was replaced in its entirety by a new bill. And our rough analysis was it's actually worse than the comptroller's office was proposing. He's taken small businesses, he's given an exemption to small businesses if you're less than $500,000 of revenue or less than 20 people, you don't have to comply. And he's also given the 380 agreement entities 5 years to comply. So he's doing some carve-outs to make it look more attractive. So that was a very sobering day down in Austin. Any questions for Jennifer?
Guys, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You just said that it was an exemption for some small businesses, but it's actually worse for us?
Well, it's not exemption if you're a legitimate small business with less than $500,000 of revenue, then you don't have to do the destination taxing. Or you continue to do your source-based taxing.
Okay.
Which is very interesting because the whole reason for doing this was to make the entire state the same.
Right.
And so now we're back to a patchwork method. Only 2% of our businesses in town would be considered to be small businesses under their definition. So it's a very small amount.
Okay, I just trying to figure out when you said it was actually worse. I was wondering why the exemption
Well, it
makes it worse.
It's Mike. You were the one that.
Yeah, it's just more complicated. It's more complicated in the sense when we do the analysis, it's like, okay, now we gotta figure out what this means. And to his point, it's either, if at 100% destination, it's clean, we can, now it's like, okay, what does this really mean? For example, there was and they got to hear this, a businesswoman from Flower Mound, she and her husband have a business. It's the two of them. Their sales are $500,000 or more, or right at it. So she wouldn't be exempt. And she said something like 26 different, they ship all over. So she would have to do what Kyle ended up showing, a really thick filing for what's going on. So in that moment, Chairman Myers made the comment, well, we'll work with you to make sure that we get everything covered. Well, they didn't.
There's 1,647 different entities in the state that you have to report to.
Right.
And one of the arguments that the Chairman Myers was making was that there's 36 states in the country that use destination taxing. So Texas needs to get on board and do the same thing. Well, John Kroll, that we've listened to, got up and said, well, sir, actually, of those 36, there's only 2 of them that have changed, and that was in the last 20 years. So it's been that way for a long time. And he said, oh, by the way, the 11, like Texas, that are source-based taxing, including, I'm not going to get them all right, but California, Illinois, Tennessee, and some other fairly large revenue states account for 50% of the sales tax. So he was using statistics but wasn't telling the whole story, and it was very it was very interesting listening to John Kroll come back and, kind of, here's a tub of apples and, well, we've got some oranges over here now. So it was an interesting day. Well, Jennifer, you're the light of good news, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Well, hopefully it gets better, but it does end up that May 29th. That is good news, I can guarantee.
All right, well, anybody have any questions, other questions? If you come up with something, funnel it through Mike or myself, we can get it to Jennifer. She really does keep her, you don't just monitor the pulse, you're monitoring their jugular veins, I think, so, she's very, very capable of getting answers, so. Thank you very much for your report out tonight.
All right, y'all have a good evening.
You too. Yeah, the trip down to Austin, Kent Collins presented on behalf of the city manager's office, and Kent was grilled by the chairman pretty mercilessly. Got the word. You were up there quite a while talking. And the chairman didn't ask me a single question, which was, it was kind of weird. But anyway, I guess the time is 7 p.m. and we're at the end of work session. The question is, do we want to begin executive session now or put that off until the end of the council meeting?
Might as well get it started, in my opinion.
All right, then I will go out and announce such. Good afternoon, good evening. The time is 7:01 p.m. We're at the end of work session and we are going to move into executive session in the first floor conference room. When we are completed with that, we will move into city council meeting here in the chambers at 7:30. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. It was 7:31 when we recessed from executive session. We will be reconvening into the regular session of the City Council in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Councilmember Carroll. I know he's chatting, and I know my microphone's on. Thank you for your patience. The time is 7:38 p.m., and we're going to move into the regular session of the Coppell City Council. Just a reminder, any persons wishing to speak during our citizens' appearance, it'll be on in just a little bit, or the public hearings, must sign the appropriate register outside the council chambers and list your residence address. Tonight, we have Steve Allen with the First United Methodist Church to give our invocation, and then we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance, so please remain standing. Steve?
Thank you. If you bow your heads, let me pray. Heavenly Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health that we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance, and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work. I'd like to especially have a thank you for those that are serving our community, first responders such as the police, firefighters, and healthcare workers, as well as our city officials and staff. I ask that you keep them safe as they continue to serve our community well. We come to you today asking for your guidance and wisdom and support as we begin this city council meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. I pray for the agenda set before us today, and please give an assurance of what we please, that will please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Coppell. It is in your most blessed name I pray. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 6 is a proclamation, and it is for Pickleball Month. And Nancy was wondering if everyone could come forward, and absolutely, so please join me down front.
We changed our thing. Oh, we're going out front? Yeah. We're going out. Could I talk to you? Oh, to the front. All the way.
All right, council, for your consideration. Whereas pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States, there are 36.5 million players in the U.S., according to a news report released in January 2023 by the Association of Pickleball Professionals. And whereas pickleball programs have become an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Coppell, and whereas pickleball programs aid in building healthy, active communities by providing an intergenerational, low-impact, competitive sport that's easy to learn inexpensive to play, and improves and promotes physical, mental, and emotional health, along with the camaraderie, teamwork, kindness, and enjoyment for the individuals and the community as a whole. And whereas because staff pickleball volunteers and enthusiasts have shared their joy of pickleball, the program at Wagon Wheel Tennis and Pickleball Center has grown from 45 to over 832 registered players in the last 2.5 years. And whereas the open play pickleball program has been so popular that the original 4 pickleball court pilot program has now expanded to 8 to 9 court regular play, and league play is upwards of 60 teams with over 350 participants. And whereas the USA Pickleball Association has designated April as National Pickleball Month, and whereas the City of Coppell recognizes the benefits derived from the sport of pickleball, now therefore I, Wes Mays, Mayor of the City of Coppell, do hereby proclaim the month of April and each subsequent month of April thereafter as National Pickleball Month. In witness thereof, have set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Coppell to be affixed this 25th day of April 2023. The only thing that was going through my mind while I was reading that I was just sort of thankful that 832 players weren't here tonight.
They're on the courts right now.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve a proclamation celebrating the month of May as Pickleball Month and authorizing the mayor to sign.
Seconded by Councilmember Carroll. All in favor?
Long, Hinojosa Smith, Carol, Neville, Dunn, Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
All right. So just before we do anything, since everyone had their hands up there, how many of you guys have played at least once? 1? 2? All right. So you got your work cut out for you. Who would like? Councilmember Neville's.
No, Mayor, thank you. First of all, how exciting it. Number one, nobody ever shows up when we talk about budget for this many people. So I guess we got to put pickleball on the budget agenda, evidently. So one thing that was very interesting. So I was browsing through Reddit 1 or 2 days ago, and there's a Dallas subreddit, and it said the person had compiled a list of all the pickleball courts in the DFW area, and guess which court was number 1 on their list? It's Wagon Wheel, and so I don't know. Maybe people out there promoting are going to get even more players. I don't know, but I mean, it just goes to show really how the sport has taken off and how this community has embraced the sport. So we want to thank you so much for using the courts, using the facilities, and help spreading pickleball. I know it's taking the nation by storm, and we appreciate you guys out there making it happen. So thanks, guys.
Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Question and comment. I know I can look up, but where did the pickle come from? From pickleball?
The name pickleball?
Yeah.
It's a debate.
The people that invented the game.
It's a debate.
It's a
Okay.
debate, but the rumor is the people that invented the game had a dog that was named Pickle.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. Well, I know Councilmember Neville has played, and from what he told me was that he thought he was in shape and good, but he got beat, and so I'm kind of.
But in his defense, he came, I invited him, he came on a day that it was a little rainy out, so we didn't get to go full out because we had.
Wait, that wasn't full out?
And so that's why I was debating, should I go try to see whether I'm in better shape than him or not. But yeah, one of these days I would love to come out there. And then you also mentioned 800 some, and you guys are here, so I don't want to say that you guys are slackers, being here. But you could get back at them and say, hey, next meeting, they're also going to have another proclamation, which we're not, and get them all over here too. So, but no, thank you for all you do, and I would love to come out and try to beat Kevin, at least to the level, but someday. So.
Place 4
right.
versus place 5.
Nancy, it looks like Nancy is trying to say something here, so.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the mayor and the city council for having us here this evening because it's a big deal. I want to first of all, many of us came out from the pickleball courts to here tonight, so that's why we're kind of dressed the way that we are. I want to recognize a couple people, and then I want to hand it over to Eric, who's the director of our facilities over at Wagon Wheel, to kind of give us some information about what things are going on over there. So first and foremost, I want to thank Barb Schmidt, yes, Barb Schmidt is our volunteer leader who, it's one of those jobs where, thankless jobs, thank you, but nobody works harder at a job to corral people, to motivate people, to keep people in order, which she's very good at, and to keep us organized, because when you go from 45 people to 800 plus people in 2.5 years, that's a big number to keep things, because we don't only facilitate citizens of Coppell, but people who come from all over. Wagon Wheel is just not a Coppell facility. It's a facility that serves a lot of people in the region. So when they talk about it being one of the top facilities around, it's because people come from all over. So Barb, thank you so much for all that you do. It does not go unannounced. We do have two young, these are our future up-and-coming pickleball players. Also, if you are on the pickleball committee at Wagon Wheel, raise your hand, please. They're higher, David. So these are a lot of people who put in their time to come in, and we kind of have to keep things flowing, because it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but you have your group of people that you have to organize and keep things flowing and keep it where you keep a group of 800 people happy. So it's very important. I want to also introduce Eric Clay, who is your official title is Director of Wagon Wheel Facility. Tell me.
Or Facility Manager.
Facility Manager. Okay. So Eric is our North Star in making sure that we follow all the directions and the rules, and he keeps that facility going. We have tournaments going on there. We have league play. So it's not just a bunch of people showing up playing pickleball randomly. There's a lot of organization that goes into it. So I want to hand the mic over to Eric to tell us a little bit more about what he does and how the facility serves the community.
I know. Thank you. Nancy has said it all pretty much, but one thing I do want to stress, and putting that together was really fun, thinking back to when we did start pickleball as a 4-court pilot program. Where we are today, oftentimes we have 12 pickleball courts going and people waiting to get on the courts. Appreciate everyone patiently waiting. We look forward to continuing to grow the program. Like Nancy said, we've got leagues, we've got open plays, we've got lessons. We're already doing great with the adult population. Youth population is right behind them. So we're super excited about the growth and development of pickleball, and we thank you for all the support. Thank you.
Let's go.
Off to the courts. We gotta go play before it closes.
I took a ton of pictures. Thank you so much. Everyone had their eyes.
So item number 7 is a proclamation designating the week of April 23rd through 29th as National Library Week. I'd like Amy Pittman has it to come forward. Did you bring friends with you?
Some friends. We have friends.
Come on. So I've said this before, but whenever we go and interview members for the library board, my absolute favorite group to interview are the Friends of the Library, because you guys are so passionate, and it's just unbelievable what you guys do. So thank you very much. All right, council, for your consideration. Whereas libraries provide the opportunity for everyone to pursue their passions and engage in lifelong learning, and whereas libraries have long served as trusted institutions for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, and whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are diverse as the population they serve and ensure equity of access for all, and whereas libraries adapt to the ever-changing needs of their communities, continually expanding their collections, services, and partnerships, and whereas libraries play a critical role in the economic vitality of communities by providing internet and technology access, literacy skills, and support for job seekers, small businesses, and entrepreneurs, and whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that promote a sense of local connection, advancing understanding, civic engagement, and shared community goals, and whereas the Cosby Library and Community Commons has been serving the city of Coppell in all these ways and more since 1974, and whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, I, Wes Mays, Mayor of the City of Coppell, do hereby proclaim the week of April 23rd, 2023 as National Library Week. It's too bad they can't teach speaking as well. In witness thereof, I've set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Coppell to be affixed this 25th day of April 2023. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve Agenda Item 7 and approve a proclamation designating the week of April 23rd through 29th as National Library Week.
Thank you, and seconded by Councilmember John. All in favor?
Long and Ahosa Smith, Carol Nevels, Dunn, Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed. Motion carries.
So thank you very much. Council, any comments? Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do. I know that I've had an opportunity, along with some of my fellow council members up here, I've had the opportunity to interview many of the library board members, and it's always such a hard decision because everybody is so passionate about our library, and I love everything that y'all are doing. I love how much time, effort, and commitment that you put into our library, and just the dedication and the passion that you bring to all the programming that we have, and just what you do to help serve our community. So to each and every one of you, thank you, because I know it's a volunteer position, and for those of you who are there full-time, just thank you for all that you do. Truly appreciate it.
Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Echo everything Councilmember Hinojosa Smith said, and you guys do such a great job, and that's the reason why I am part of the community builders, and always excited about the programs that you put up, and being great to be part of it. And again, I look forward to many of the the events that you guys put up because of the new, fresh ideas and new, fresh information that you provide. So keep up with the good work, and thank you for all you do.
Councilmember Nevels.
Yes, I definitely want to echo my fellow council members in saying that I think that our library is a crown jewel in some of the amazing amenities that we have in this community. And just a reminder to the public that the library is not just about books. When we look at our 2040 plan and look at our pillars, and we talk about Coppell as a laboratory of learning, I really do look at our library as a hub of that laboratory of learning, and just all the amazing programs and just different types of resources that are available to our citizens and our community members. It's a real treat. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you will continue to do in the future. We really appreciate you.
Did you have something to say? Just a small thing?
Small thing. So, one, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for that proclamation. So, the theme actually of National Library Week this year is There's More to the Story, and that is especially true for us at the Cosby Library and Community Commons. I mean, I think most of our community is aware of the variety of stories that we have, from picture books to large print to bestsellers to graphic novels to even downloadable ebooks and e-audiobooks. but there's just so much more to what we do. You know, we invite people to come and attend our award-winning Meet Your Neighbor programs. We have streaming video that you can download to your tablet or phone. We have a time where you can come shake your wiggles out at our story times. You know, we have, you can check out a microscope or a metal detector through our Library of Things. You can come and hang out and study for an AP exam. You can even check out one of our Discovery backpacks that you can explore with your elementary age children. And we would not be able to tell the story that we do if it was not for our team of amazingly creative and passionate library staff, and then the continued support and love that we see from our entire Coppell community. So I just want to say thank you. And if you have not been to the library at all, we do not judge. If you've not been for a couple of years, or even if you just came to visit us yesterday, I personally invite everyone to come by the Cosby Library and Community Commons this week and help us celebrate National Library Week. So thank you again.
All right, item number 8 is our citizens' appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes each. An individual speaker's time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes. With approval of the majority of the council members present, persons signed up to speak will be called in the order that they signed up. No personal attacks by any speaker shall be made against any member of the council, the mayor, individual, group, or corporation. There will be no comments or deliberation from the City Council due to the Texas Open Meetings Record Act. Once the timer sounds at 2 minutes, the City Secretary will break in and make the request to the Mayor and City Council if they would like to extend the speaker's time. We do have a number of people that have signed up to speak tonight. First up on the list is Phil LeBerg. Phil? Please state your name and your address, please, sir.
My name is Philip LeBerge, 858 Dalmalley Lane, Coppell, Texas, Coppell Greens. I'd like to ask up front if I could have an extra 2 minutes if I need it to talk. Yes, sir. Great. Thank you very much. I've read the Vision 2040 plan, and I'm really a believer in the idea of having a bold vision and a big impact, especially when we do something like building a veterans memorial. I'd like to talk to you briefly about 2 ideas that I think are important, having a design competition and also fundraising. I handed out something to you that you have in front of you. I'd first like to look at design competitions. As an example, Springdale, Arkansas is a great example of where they had a design competition. One of the things that's different between a design competition and just having an architect that you've used in the past do a design for you is that with a design competition, you're probably going to get 20, 30, 40, 50 designs that you'll be able to look at. If you use an architect that you've used, he's probably going to give you option 1 and option 2. So you got a lot of things to look at that you probably didn't have the opportunity to think about. You're going to put it out for a competition to design firms. And in our area, we have lots of prestigious design firms, HKS, Jacobs, Corrigan, the Beck Group, McCarthy, Gilbane, Kiewit, you name it. We have some of the best in our area. When you put it out for bid, you're going to get a lot of buzz. A lot of people are going to hear about it. It's going to make the news. Going to get a lot of publicity that'll help you support. The second thing I'm going to talk about is public fundraising, which goes back to being bold and having a big impact. Fundraising, well, you're proposing to spend $350,000 on this as city money. What I'd like to do is something like what Kearney, Nebraska did. Kearney, Nebraska city kicked in $500,000. They matched the first $500,000. Their foundation raised $2 million to build their Veterans Memorial. You know, a town that's smaller than us in the middle of Nebraska raised $2 million. You know, I think it's very feasible that we could do the same thing here in the city of Coppell. You know, why don't we think big? Why don't we take the opportunity to do something really unique and have a great design and put it in a location where lots of people are going to see it, as compared to having the architect that we've used make two options that we select and possibly put it behind City Hall where nobody would see it. I think it's really clear that having a design competition is something that we should do. We ought to give some really serious thought to creating a foundation that would raise money for the Veterans Memorial to build something that's really great for our community. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Barbara Bailey.
Barbara Bailey, 232 Plantation. I have an email real quick from one of my neighbors. It just says, like to bring an issue almost completed reconstruction Plantation Drive to your attention. The new design at the intersection are not driver or pedestrian friendly. It's very easy for pedestrians to trip and fall unless they are careful and not distracted by cell phones. The new design is not driver friendly. Unless the new design is required by the state or federal rules, please go back to the old way. And that was August 8th, 2022. Apparently he sent that in. I'll turn it in. And my thing is, the city did put reflector tape on some of the traffic islands on Plantation, but they're a bit confusing, to be honest. I've been told that the right-of-way issue was part of the design problem, but it wasn't a retrofit. It was a totally new design. The city could have designed curb extensions, or also called bump outs, to allow more room for a better path of travel that would provide room for bikes on the sidewalks, which the city has promised for over 30 years, because I've been here for 35. There is something like 60 feet of access across Plantation, so there's plenty of room for two cars passing, plus the bump out at the corners. But in any case, the sides need to be flare sides for safety, and I started coming to the city council because I had a skull fracture when I was 15 and the recovery was long and painful, and I don't want anybody else to get hurt. And these are trip hazards, and these return curbs are just flat out dangerous. And every state and municipality, I've turned in documentation to y'all, says that. No one, I can't. And I have asked for one independent study that's previously done, that the city shows that these are not trip hazards, but the city hasn't provided it. I can't get it from the guy in Austin that does ADA stuff for curbs and sidewalks. And I've turned into the council all this documentation. And I would just like at the very minimum, you put flare sides on these curbs. At the very minimum. They're just wrong. And they're wrong all over town. And just one second. This is thing. If you got, when they did our street, the drain that comes out, it doesn't drain. It's a puddle, a big lake full of mosquitoes, and that needs to be corrected. And what the contractors did is they stuffed all this dead leaves behind the bushes along the curve and chopped up the trees badly. You can't see the trees so much anymore because they leafed out. But anyway, that really should get attended to. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Next on the list is Sue McCarthy. Now, ma'am, I have you down for two separate items. Is that correct?
That's correct. Hi, my name is Sue McCarthy. I live at 456 Woodway here in Coppell. And my first one was about the Veterans Memorial that was proposed. And I wanted to reiterate my desire for this to go in Andy Brown Park and to be in a prominent location. I've been here since 1991. My oldest son went to school with Jacob Schick, so I'm very familiar with this guy who went to war as a veteran and lost arms. and is totally disabled, and I think that he should be recognized in a prominent place in this city. He graduated from Coppell High School, and if that is my minutes for that subject.
Just go ahead and continue on.
Okay. And then my second agenda is about smart cities, the proposal for a smart city. And the proposal is to add drones for surveillance, robotics to assist the police department, and then the fire department, and then to automate city services. So I'm thinking about the jobs of human contact that might be lost in this, but even worse is I did a research on antennaresearch.com, and there are already 247 towers and 367 antennas within a 3-mile radius of my home already. Nobody's done research, or I haven't seen anything to prove that it's safe to live in the midst of these microwave emitting towers, which 5G are even more detrimental from personal things I have read. Plus, they deplete the oxygen in the air when there's a whole bunch of them that can create hypoxia and other issues. And who's going to protect the citizens from the surveillance proposed by using drones and proposed robotics to assist the police in their work? That reminds me of RoboCop. It can get out of hand if it's negatively programmed, and who's going to be able to go up against a robot that is performing police services? And we've already had power outages where it took me 6 months to replace a part on my pool, to clear my pool that looked like a swamp for those entire 6 months until I got the part to replace it after our power outage 2 years ago. And what will happen to connectivity of smart homes, to the automation if power grid...
Excuse me, ma'am, your time is up.
Okay, 5 seconds. If this automation, if the power grid fails again, or worse, it's deliberately turned off to control the occupants in the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight. Our next speaker is John Benton. John?
Good evening. My name is John Benton, 830 Applecross Court in Coppell Greens. And I'm a 23-year resident here with my family. Came here to teach in the high school. We fell in love with Coppell. That's why we're still here. And the many things that you and the council have done over the years, whether it's the core, the beautiful parks and everything else, great. A couple of days ago, Phil LaVerge told me about the Veterans Memorial that you're proposing, which I believe is a great idea. I'm a 20-year Army retiree veteran of Desert Storm. Jake Ship, I did not have him as a student, but I know other teachers that did. It's a great idea. However, I immediately had the same agreement that he did about it needs to be in a more prominent place. I'm sorry, my many years here, I think I've been in this building 2 other times. Everything else I do online. Andy Brown Park, I'm there almost daily in the summer, and there's swarms of people there. It seems to me if you're going to make the effort, if you want to do it right, please put it in a place where people will see it, will recognize it, and make the effort worthwhile. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight. That was the end of our citizens' appearance. Item number 9 is a presentation regarding ADA curb ramp design and seeking City Council direction. Ms. Corey Allen to present. I did have a question, Corey. Last time you were here, you had your entire family visiting you. Did they come tonight?
They're not here in person, but they are watching.
Well, in that case, welcome to the city of Coppell, and we're pleased to have you visiting with us, so thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. My name is Corey Allen, and I'm going to be talking to you tonight about our current ADA curb ramp design, and then I'll be seeking your counsel on future design. I'm the ADA and Capital Programs Coordinator for the City of Coppell. That means 50% of my job is ADA projects, and the other 50% is capital programs projects. I'm a committee member on the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities. As a shameless plug, our June meeting is in Tyler, Texas. I'm also a member of Little People of America. I'm a chapter officer for the DFW chapter. So the last time I was here, which was July of 2022, I talked about what we had already completed with our ADA program and what we were currently working on. Today is a follow-up on that, a continuation of that presentation. I'll be continuing to talk about what we're working on and then asking you what our direction is going forward. You may recognize some of these photos and slides that we'll be going through as this is a follow-up. So this is a breakdown of a directional curb ramp and all the pieces that go along with it. Every single piece that you see here is designed for an individual with a disability in mind, able-bodied and individuals with disabilities. The very first piece is the running slope and the cross slope. So running slope has to be under 8.3%, and the cross slope has to be under 2%. This allows someone who has mobility impairments not to teeter-totter, not to slide, not to be pushed in one direction, to have a safe travel to traverse down or up a ramp. Landings, they have to be at the top and the bottom of every ramp. They have two purposes. The first one is so the individual can change direction. The second one is so that the individual can rest. If you're mobility impaired and you've just traversed up or down a ramp, you're going to want a second to catch your breath. They're also really important for individuals who are blind or have low vision to be able to traverse safely through an intersection. Third section is the directional curbs. So these are super important to guide individuals with disabilities through an intersection effectively. We do not want individuals traversing into the center of an intersection. This directional curb would stop someone from doing that, whether they are mobility impaired or they are blind or have low vision. This would stop them from entering into the center of the intersection. These directional curbs are not always triangles. They are different shapes depending on the right-of-way and each corner in whatever area we're installing these ramps at. So they may look different. The last piece is the truncated domes. A few years ago, these were implemented as a standard. They are a tactile difference for someone with a vision impairment or someone who's blind to be able to feel the difference when they're about to traverse into a vehicular way, so cars, bicycles, things like that. So these are required at the end of every curb ramp where a pedestrian is going to cross into a vehicular way. All of the specs for these directional curb ramps are included in the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, or PROAG, and in the Texas Department of Transportation Pedestrian Guidelines 2018, or TxDOT Ped 18. I'll say acronyms later, so I'll explain all of those. They are all approved by the state, and they all are under state and federal guidelines. They have all been approved by registered accessibility specialists that we have working with us on these projects. So what standards do we use here in Coppell to create these directional curb ramps? So at the national level, we have the Americans with Disability Act Accessibility Guidelines, or ADAG. This is a civil rights law that everyone knows as ADA. This includes the physical things and also policies and procedures at a federal level that we use. There's the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, or PROAG. These focus on the right-of-way and pedestrians, so sidewalks, ramps, street corners, curbs, crossings, intersections, things like that. At the state level, because Texas is special, we have our own set of laws. Texas accessibility standards are construction law, so any current construction, any reconstruction over $50,000 has to be registered with TAS and also has to have a registered accessibility specialist do a plan review and a final inspection. The Texas Department of Transportation Pedestrian Guidelines 2018, or TxDOT Ped 18, focuses on pedestrians, focuses on the right-of-way, so sidewalks, ramps, street corners, crossings, intersections. The directional curb ramps that we are designing and constructing here in Coppell are covered both under PROAG and TxDOT Ped 18. Their specs are found in both of those. So here are 6 other cities in DFW that are using directional curb ramps. Each one of them is a little bit different depending on what was in the area and what maybe they had to build around. That's something that we get to create and design as we come to different intersections. So you can see traffic poles, you can see gas lines, you can see fire hydrants, water meters, vaults, all kinds of things in here that when they were designed and constructed, they had to avoid. They're a little bit different. So the top row, Frisco, Plano, and Flower Mound, you can see have the triangle in the center. Prosser, Denton, and Little Elm have a little bit more of like a graduated directional curb in the middle of them. All of them have the truncated domes. All of them are fully accessible. As a matter of fact, on the Flower Mound ones, they're brand new. They haven't even ripped off the paper off the truncated domes. In Coppell's efforts to be the safest and most innovative city in DFW, we are installing these directional curb ramps. For Plantation Drive, the engineers that worked with us on the project, Pape Dawson, hired Marty Mullins of Texas Ability as the registered accessibility specialist for that project. He did the plan review and he did the final inspection. I was with him when he did the final inspection on site. Everything passed with flying colors. In an effort to reaffirm and make sure that all of the intersections are ADA compliant, they're the best option as directional curb ramps. We hired a third party to come and assess those, and we'll talk about their findings. Ross Thomas of Accessology is here with us. He is who we hired to look at these intersections and confirm that they are accessible, that they are the best option, that Coppell is being innovative. So this is a summary of his findings. Directional curb ramps are the most preferred and best safety option for all groups of people to traverse intersections and street corners effectively. Additionally, diagonal curb ramps, also known as transitional blends, are discouraged at street crossings because they create an unsafe condition for some of the covered disability groups. As designed and constructed, the pedestrian elements located at Plantation and Magnolia in Coppell, Texas meet or exceed state and federal accessibility requirements. Each intersection and street corner must be evaluated for the available public right-of-way and what type of accessible crossing will fit. The first choice is the directional curb ramps, but if enough room does not exist, hybrid designs are implemented by combining directional curb ramps with other types listed in the standards. The figure here on the right is from PROAG, the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines. The 2 arrows that are in the sidewalk show the ramp, and then the 2 arrows at the truncated domes show the crossing itself. They're flat against the ground, flush with the street. So that figure is in Chapter 3, Section 304. The directional curb ramps that we are installing all over the city of Coppell are accessible, approved, compliant, and they are the best option. So let's talk about the future state of curb ramps here. We have created an accessible intersections webpage on our website. It's live. If you scan that QR code, it will take you directly there. This is an effort to explain to all the citizens in Coppell the how and the why, what we're doing here in Coppell with these intersections and these corners and these ramps, to make sure they understand why it looks different, how we're creating them, and how they're getting designed. We will be passing out a summary page of that web page at all of the neighborhood meetings. It will also have a QR code at the bottom so they can go to the full page if they want to. And we, at all of the projects in the city, at certain intersections, we'll be posting curated signs that are going to say accessible ramps coming soon, and it will have the QR code as well. So if they're walking their dog, if they're pushing their child in a stroller, if they're driving by, if they're traversing across that intersection, they can scan the QR code real quick and find that information. The screenshot there on the left shows you if you want to get there by clicking. It shows you if you go on to government accessible intersections on the left-hand side is how you can get there. So again, we want to educate our citizens on the how and why of what we're doing and why we're doing it. There are 2 types of directional curb ramps that we use here in the city. They depend on a lot of different things, like I talked about in my previous presentation. Right-of-way is a big one, space, how much right-of-way we have, how many feet we have. So the one on the top left, where the ramp meets the street, where the ramp is perpendicular to the street, requires at least 11 feet of space from the curb in the street to the back of the sidewalk. Because, like I said a minute ago, you have to have a landing at the top and the bottom of every ramp. So if the ramp meets the street, you have to have a landing on the backside. Landing is 5 by 5. So now you have the depth of the ramp plus the 5 feet of the landing. You need at least 11 feet. If the property behind where the landing is elevated in any way, that ramp has to be longer. You cannot go above 8.3%. So if you only have this much space and it's 8.3, it's going to be too steep. So you have to account for that space and go further back and further back, which sometimes we don't have that much space. Sometimes the public right-of-way doesn't give us that much real estate. When you create the ramp figuration with ramp meets the street, as you can see on the back side of the directional curb there, the grass in that area meets the sidewalk, so they're flush. So it does not create that 6-inch curb on the back side. It's more of a gradient there on that directional curb. That picture on the top left is Town Center Boulevard. The picture on the bottom right is Maple Leaf and Sugarberry. This is a residential area where the ramp meets the street option did not fit. We did not have 11 feet. We'd be bumping into residential property there that's not ours. So we had to retrofit these ramps in that location. So in this example where the ramp does not meet the street, the ramps are parallel to the street. That gives us a lot more space. So again, the landing on the back side is within the sidewalk. Then that ramp is parallel to the street, so we can be as long as we need it to. We don't have to worry about infringing on space that's not ours. If the elevation there, as you can see on the right-hand side, it's a little more steep than the left. With that, we had plenty of space to make that ramp as long as we needed it to, so that it would never go over 8.3%. You'd ramp down, and all of that area there in the front is all at street level. So it's all technically a landing, it's all flat, and that is what creates those 6-inch curbs, directional curbs on the inside. You only need 6 feet of right-of-way to do the ramp does not meet the street option. So these are great for tight corners that we have around the city to be able to fit them and still be completely ADA accessible. Our first goal when we are designing ramps around the city is directional curb ramps, 100% all the time. They're the best option. They're the most inclusive for everyone. Our second goal is to go into each corner and figure out how much space do we have, how much right-of-way do we have. In both of those pictures, we had to avoid storm drains, maybe water meters, maybe faults or different things, stop signs, we had to move signs, all of those things. There's lots of variables that go into it, but directional curb ramps is our biggest goal. So if we stick with the top left, which is ramp meets the street, like I said, we need 11 feet of space in order to do that. If we stick with that design, we have some options that we need your guidance on. So we can acquire an easement or right-of-way with residential approval. So this would be a signed agreement from the resident. Coppell would pay that resident for the square footage needed. So if it was an easement, we'd pay half the value of the land. If it was a right-of-way, we'd pay the full value of the land. This would be something that the Public Works Department would create the agreement and work out the payment. Second option would be acquire an easement or right-of-way without residential approval. This would be eminent domain. This would be something the city attorney's office would help us with. If we don't want to do eminent domain, then you could have intersections where one resident says, yes, you can purchase some of my property, and another resident might say no. So now you're going to have mixed matched ramps at that one residential intersection. So we bring to you these 3 options or ideas that we need your guidance on. So no changes at all. Current directional curb ramps are ADA compliant and they are meeting state and federal requirements. That is present day, that is true. Make a change. Do we acquire an easement or right-of-way with the residence agreement? Use eminent domain to acquire an easement or right-of-way, and possibly have a mixture of residents agreeing to acquiring the easement or right-of-way or not agreeing? Or is there another solution? So what questions or discussion items do you have?
Council, any questions for Corey. Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Allen. Last time, when you gave us a presentation, I asked you the same question, which was, I understand the current design that's been implemented is specifically for the Plantation Drive. You said that was the best. However, there was an alternative that's also acceptable. And when you say best, and I could understand that we are trying to be ADA compliant, and I'm not sure what best actually is. Are we talking about strictly for the ADA perspective, or are we talking in terms of generally everyone for the residents that use the sidewalks? The pictures that you showed us are, if you could go back.
Yeah.
Those, they seem not too restrictive in terms of people moving, on the sidewalk. But the ones that I saw, I don't know if you have any for the Plantation, there are very narrow turn, what is it called? Like curve that kind of would make you trip if you weren't careful or if you weren't watching, right? And so that was a concern that I really had. And the best design, yes, ADA, but if there's an alternative that is also that is ADA compliant, but also works for the other residents, that's what I was looking for. And is that still the option that's included with the choices that you gave?
So two things that make this the best design, if you're looking at the bottom right, the two things that stick out the most are that the crossing itself is at level with the street. So if I'm not in a wheelchair or I don't have mobility impairments in that way, but if I am in a wheelchair and I'm having to traverse the top left, a ramp to the street that's ushering me into the street at an incline, I'm going to prefer the bottom right. I'm going to prefer something that's at street level, that's not accelerating my speed into the street. The other piece is that directional curb in the center. That's going to stop an individual, either with a mobility impairment or who is blind or has low vision, from traversing into the center of the intersection. Any of the other designs, although compliant, do not have that, and they will not stop someone from traversing into the intersection. We don't want that.
And that's even with the flare design?
Yes.
Okay. And again, looking at this picture, it doesn't seem extreme, but when I look at the Plantation Drive, many of the corners doesn't look like this. It actually has where, what do you call it, where it has a turn, little height, and so it's not a straight path to cross it, or or 90-degree diagonal. You have to actually swerve around, I think, in order to either cross or to cross or to the right? And that is a design that I think is a trip hazard for many people that uses the sidewalk, whether it be a bike or walking at nighttime. So with that being said, is flare design still an option for that location that would satisfy the ADA, as well as being able to satisfy the resident that uses the sidewalk, whether it be walking or biking?
Making the curbs more noticeable definitely would be helpful, in that we put the reflective tape. We can explore other options there. Removing the curb altogether is not the safest option at all. Part of this discussion is if we want to acquire more right-of-way, if we want to do the top left design and have 11 feet at every single corner and make agreements with residents to do so, that could be an option. But at the same time, the bottom right is you're going to be able to fit those in every single corner without having to do that.
Again, I don't have the pictures put up, but bottom right, I understand that's ideal, but that's not what I see at Plantation Drive. It's quite extreme more extreme than that, to me.
Okay.
So that was my main concern about that location.
Yeah. Well, and we've had 2 registered accessibility specialists look at it, and they're approved and good to go.
Well, I mean, because you said it was the best, right? But there's also
Yeah.
alternative that does meet the ADA, plus it does not have a trip hazard like the way it's set up right now at Plantation Drive, right?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
There is an alternative design that will meet the ADA compliance, but also is less trip hazard design, correct?
If you wanted to do the top left and acquire 11 feet back, you could do that. You'd still have directional ramps, and then you might alleviate that trip hazard. You could do that, but keeping the directional curbs is the most important part. You do not want individuals traversing any intersection.
That's all I have right now.
Councilman June, I think that what you're probably talking about is, Corey, can you go back to the diagram from the access board with the, yeah, see where it's much smaller? That's what you're talking about, right? That those islands are not as large as what we were seeing in that photograph.
You mean the Plantation Drive?
Yeah.
What it is? No, it's actually not like that. It's not like that at all. There we go.
Right. So it's not, it's a big, big island. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Gentlemen,
Sorry.
thank you. Mark, did you have any other comments?
No, it was just, I was trying to understand what Councilmember June was saying.
So my takeaway from Ms. Allen's presentation is to meet all of the requirements, we basically need more real estate. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
We meet the requirements. We already do that. But to not have the 6-inch curb in the center, like the bottom right, yes, we would need more real estate at every corner.
So the question before us is, which one of those 3 options do we want to pursue?
Correct.
So, sure.
So Mayor, I would say I'm not really in favor of doing eminent domain, but I would say go approach the homeowners and to see if they would agree to an easement of some sort to see if we can make those corners better.
I'm personally glad to hear you say no eminent domain, so that's a good thing.
Right, and
But I guess, and I'm fine approaching homeowners or the property owners and seeing if they'd be willing to provide property. It would improve their accessibility, and there's advantages to doing that. Any comments from the Councilmember Carroll?
Thank you, Mayor. So my comment would be, I am glad we're trying to be very progressive on being sort of on the forefront, really. The tripping hazard, I can't see how that can be an issue. So where we can address it, and I don't know if it's with the reflective tape or reflective paint or filling it, when we have a weird triangle curb that you fill in with some kind of different colored something. I don't know exactly what the option. I would definitely be in favor of somehow bringing attention to, especially when you get in a low light, like around dusk, bringing attention to an area that potentially has a little bit more trip hazard. I would also be in favor of approaching landowners where we can and seeing if we could get an easement or the right of way to yep, do a ramp that maybe doesn't have as much trip hazard included in it. I don't know that I'm in favor of a mixed match where you mentioned like you could have one resident that says yes, one resident say no. I don't know if I'm in favor of having a mixed match at an intersection. Like we need to get everybody, sort of have everybody on board at an intersection if we're going to do it. So those are sort of my thoughts. Eminent domain is not even an option at all. There's no way that's an option. So those would be my thoughts. That it is, if we can get additional land, great. Where we can address the trip hazard and try to make it more obvious, I think that's also important. But so those where I would stand.
One of the things I've noticed, and it took me a while to realize, is this isn't your standard sidewalk crossing anymore. And so it's not like it used to be. And it is different, and it is a change. And it's a change for mobility or vision impaired individuals that most of us, quite honestly, are not necessarily very privy to. So I appreciate that. And I think that's been a growing realization of mine, and I had to get my mindset changed for that. And it's been slow, but I think I'm getting there. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Question for you: what percentage of sidewalk has been completed in City of Coppell?
In Coppell? Oh goodness, that was my last presentation. What percentage? I don't know percentage. I know we've spent at least 7 million of the 70 million that our transition plan includes. I can give you a dollar amount. I can come back to you with the square footage.
The ones we have in Plantation Drive that Councilmember John is talking about, do we have same implementation anywhere else?
That same design is used all over the city. Yeah, the directional curb ramps that are at street level, where the crossing is at street level and the ramps are on the backside.
So I was looking at the picture, the island is so large with the curve like this. Similar way we have in City of Coppell all over the place?
Yes, yeah, there's right here at Parkway and Hertz is similar to that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're all over.
Just a little reminder, Mayor Pro Tem, the ADA plan actually requires us to be compliant. They gave us 20 years to be compliant, but every sidewalk, every crossing in town will eventually have to be addressed. And we're just doing it as it's fiscally responsible. Councilmember Hill.
When we did that analysis of what the cost was going to be to make it accessible throughout the city, I don't think we took into account paying for easements, did we?
No, sir, we did not.
Yeah, so that number of 70 million, I can see probably would escalate if we have to enter agreements with citizens to gain some more real estate.
Well, since that number was calculated in
2016,
$12, it probably changed anyway.
Yeah, it's different now.
Anybody? Do you have enough direction to move forward? I think you're hearing. John did. So are we okay with approaching homeowners to acquire property as it's voluntary, on a voluntary basis, and not using eminent domain?
May I say one more thing?
Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. And just I would like it all uniform, but, Councilmember Carroll talked about some might agree, some might not, but if we could address some of the issues, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, it's better than not having any. That's a trip hazard issue. So that's my thought on that one. Yeah, I want a uniform. I want all the property owners to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do the right-of-way or easement and get this done. But if it's not, I think it's better than not having fixed anything if some of them agree to it. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Nevels.
Ms. Allen, thank you again for the presentation. The gentleman who's in the audience, I'm sorry, could you repeat his name again?
Ross Thomas.
Ross Thomas, okay. So, and Mr. Thomas, I don't know if, I appreciate you being here today, number one. So if we were to look at you and say the curbs that we have here in town, the ones that you've evaluated, and did you look at the ones on Plantation? Yes, sir. Right. Were you able to look at?
Mr., would you please come
Oh,
forward
yeah,
so
come
we
on
can
down,
hear
sorry.
you?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, I appreciate it. So, Mr. Thomas, again, thank you for joining us tonight. So, you've looked at the curb ramps and all the intersections on Plantation. Did you have an opportunity to look at some of the other intersections that we have in the city?
Yeah, my company actually has done the transition plan assessments for the sidewalks and intersections.
All right, excellent. And so, and you were a third party of the design on Plantation, correct? So just kind of restating what you had in your presentation. Okay.
Correct.
So based on your expertise and what your company does, and so the ramps that we have on Plantation around town, they are the best ramps for accessibility, for mobility, for kind of providing that inclusivity for all of the citizens that we have in town.
Yeah, they're the best and safest ramps that are designed today.
So I guess, kind of in hearing what Councilmember John was saying was some of the intersections do create some issues with they're just different intersections than what they were in the past with those islands, if you will. So in terms of safety for bicyclists and pedestrians who maybe don't have impairments and, are maybe used to the old ramps, could you speak to that in any way?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to the bicyclists. I can only speak to accessibility. And the reason the Department of Justice recommends that you have directional curb ramps are because for a number of years, a lot of people who are in chairs do not have a lot of upper body strength. So when they approach a diagonal curb ramp, it sends them straight out into traffic. And then in addition with people with visual impairments, this tells them where they need to go. And again, it doesn't send them directly out into traffic.
Thank you for speaking to what you are allowed to speak, or what you are, authorized to speak on, I guess. So is there anything more that we could do in your, in your professional assessment for accessibility and mobility of our citizens?
We've talked about reflecting tape. We've talked about paint and just making it more visible to pedestrians that maybe aren't paying attention.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you answering my question.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have a follow-up.
Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor, based on what I think we heard, I think I do have, I have a question for the rest of the council members regarding, we've got what we're, like future state's going to be, but we do have some that have already been done. Do we need to give staff direction about going back and trying to acquire additional land at the places that we've already done, knowing that that's going to have a cost, that's going to have a, because those are all compliant already, right? Those are
Correct.
already in place. So do we need to spend the money, or do we want to look at spending the money to redo them or acquire additional land? So I sort of posed that to the rest of the council.
That is an excellent question.
Yeah,
That is an excellent question.
especially related to Plantation, but it could be any of them that we've already addressed in the past.
So council, what's the opinion on that one? Councilmember John.
Before I make that comment, I just have a question, just a clarification. Did you say that you actually participated in the design of those intersections, or
Not the design, just the consultation for the transition plan,
initially or only after?
initially.
So initially, so basically you did give a thumbs up to that design, and then you went back and checked it and said, that's good?
We're the ones that were outside walking the sidewalks, taking the measurements, making sure that all the ramps are okay. We've assessed the buildings, we've assessed the program services and activities, and assisted in designing the transition plan.
Right, so I'm saying you thumbs up beginning, before design, before I put it there, and then you went back there and said thumbs up, it's good?
I was not the RAS on the project.
Who was?
Marty Mullins of Texasability.
Okay, so you didn't give a recommendation or anything like that in the beginning? Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm. Thank you. If we weren't going to address what Councilmember Carroll was talking about, if we weren't going to address what's there now, then really there is no issue. I think that what's there now is the issue. That's why we were talking about it. And there's a trip hazard that's existing. That's why we're trying to correct it. So if we're not gonna address those, then I guess it doesn't matter then. No, I understand we have to take into cost, but that's what we're trying to address. But if we say it's already there, forget about that, move on to the next one or the future one, then it defeats the purpose of talking about the issue.
Councilmember Nevels.
All right. Ms. Allen, I got a question for you specifically. So I know that we've had some issues with the plantation, curb design. We've had some citizen feedback on that. Where there are, and I think I know what Councilmember John is talking about, those islands, those triangles, if you will, can get pretty skinny in some places, and I think that's the issue that we're really talking about. Where we have those triangle or those skinny curves or those skinny versions of these triangles in other parts of the city, have we gotten other citizen feedback or issues about those? Like, for example, I know you said there was, I think at Maple Leaf and another.
Sugarberry, yeah, that's that one
Sugarberry.
there.
It's actually my mom's neighborhood, so I'm quite familiar with, I was like, it looks like her neighborhood over there. But, so I know some of those ramps have been installed all around the city, but there's been no additional feedback from other citizens or anything is what you're telling me.
Correct, yeah, no, we haven't had any feedback. We've had questions, what's coming here, what are y'all doing?
Okay.
We say we're building ramps, that's it, yeah, nope.
Okay.
They're all over Denton Tap and Parkway and Hertz. Yep.
Okay. I guess a follow-up to that would be, I know that we've put down some reflective tape and, kind of looking at some things to make that area of Plantation more highly visible. In your assessment, do you think that there are other areas in the city where that might be necessary, or kind of go into your question? I know it's not necessarily going to other projects and acquiring land, but are there other areas of the city that might need potential, taping or reflecting?
I don't know of any off the top of my head right now, and that was going to be kind of a question I was thinking of is, if we do go back, how do we assess that? Is that by request? Is that by, I'm going to get 800 emails about, I want you to do this to my corner. Well, it's ADA compliant, so why would we touch it?
I got you.
So that would be a question I would have, but I can't think of any right now that we would go back and do anything with.
Okay. No, I appreciate you going through this exercise with me. Thank you.
Councilmember John.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, I think last time when we talked about Plantation, we talked about there was no meeting with the residents, but moving forward, we were going to have meetings with the residents, but then you talked about how some people didn't even know what's coming in. Are we having meetings with residents?
We haven't done a reconstruction project since then in a residential area. Woodhurst is next, and that's why we created the accessible intersections page that's live.
Okay.
So at Woodhurst, we'll have the summary page, and then we'll have the curated signs and projects going forward.
So there will be a meeting with the residents about
Yep, at the
what's
neighborhood,
coming. Okay.
at the neighborhood meeting, yeah.
Thank you.
I think we still have a very valid question from Councilmember Carroll on what we want to do with existing crosswalks or crossings. So, Councilmember Nevels.
I think that was kind of part of my question, and I apologize I didn't fully connect the dots on that, but asking if there were any other intersections or, if there were any other issues, kind of speaking on if we should go back and try to, if we don't have any other issues or, I just don't see the need for going down that route if we don't have any other citizen issues or complaints.
Councilmember John.
Well, since we're talking about options, three options, right? Three directions as to which way to go. If we ask the resident the corner lots, and if they all said no, I guess that ends it, right? Basically. So, but we haven't asked whether they are willing to, provide the easement or right of way yet, and maybe they're thinking also the same thing, that this is a bad corner, or they're thinking, I'm fine with this. So we just don't know yet, so I think we should at least inquire.
So, Councilmember John, I think your decision point should be whether you're willing to step up and spend the money should they agree to do it. Asking the question is pretty easy.
Sure.
It's going to be your decision on whether to spend the money to do that.
Well, I'll go back to where, if it wasn't an issue, it wouldn't have been brought up. So,
You had one down, Councilor Member Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Ms. Allen, just make sure I didn't misunderstand. Is it really, to Councilmember Neville's point, is it really just the plantation area that we have this concern? I mean, you make a valid point about how do we know what are the parameters to let us know that we have a problem or don't have a problem for tape or anything else. Is it really the plantation area the only one that we have this issue in? And am I mistaken in thinking that there is a trip hazard at some of these corners? Is that a bad perception on my part?
I have not received anything from any other area or neighborhood or street in Coppell about ramps or directional curbs or any issues with them.
Are the ones in Plantation, are those more unique than most of the others we have, or?
The directional curbs are smaller. They're not exact triangles, and that's because of right-of-way. That's how much space we had to fit in there. Yeah.
Councilmember Hill.
Ms. Allen, in the plantation area, how many curbs are we talking about that are directional? Is it 4 or maybe 6 or
9?
9. And Mr. Garza, do you know the scope of the budget for that project, roughly?
I know what it is.
Oh, you know? I'm sorry.
It's the number you gave me earlier, right? Yeah, 106,000 to replace them.
Okay. So we're talking potentially that much, if not more, if everyone had to be done. And every homeowner agreed to give up their property or some portion thereof. Well, they're not going to do it for free. We have to do it market value, right? Or half the market value? Yeah, so it's going to go from, yeah. So that's I mean, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, let's ask the question, but I'm fairly certain you're not going to get that many homeowners that are willing to give up their property. I mean, you might have 1 or 2 that will say, yes, we can, and we're in it for, 20 grand or something. So I wouldn't be opposed to that.
So you would not be opposed to?
Asking the question,
Okay.
and if they say yes, then buying the right-of-way or the easement.
Councilmember Carroll.
And so that, just to clarify this, so we're talking about just doing it at Plantation, right? I just want to make sure we're just limiting it to that project. Okay. I'm okay with, I mean, if we go ask the question and find out what the residents say and see if there's something to be done or not. I'm okay with that.
Brianna?
Nope, sorry, I agree. I was just saying, and then we'll know what options we have once we know if there's a yay or nay, right? So we at least can go down the process of elimination.
So I'm hearing a consensus that we're okay at least asking the question?
Yes,
Councilmember John?
Yeah, and Ms. Allen, if you could provide a list of where the same type of curb have been implemented, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. I think you got a consensus that you're okay to go ask the question and determine what the scope of the effort would be at that point.
And the question is to make it, the ramp meets the street design?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
It would be basically acquiring, is it?
The 11 feet.
Are they is the homeowner willing to cede the property over?
Okay.
All right. Anybody have any other questions or comments? Thank you both for your time. Sorry to keep you up here so long, but appreciate the time.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thank you very much. Item number 10 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is routine in nature and generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through the budget or past council action. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions are available on the screen. Council members, we have items A through D. Is there any item need to be pulled or discussed? Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve item number 10, A through D.
Thank you. Got a second by Councilmember Nevels. All in favor?
Long and Ahosa Smith, Carol Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 11 is a continued public hearing. This was opened at the last council meeting. This is considered repeal of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances by repealing and replacing Chapter 15, Other Codes Adopted, Article 15-2 National Electric Code to adopt the 2023 National Electric Code with local amendments and authorizing the mayor to sign. Mr. Schubert.
Yeah, all the data was provided at the previous council meeting on April 11th for you all to take your time to go over and review, and I'm here to answer any questions if anybody has any.
All right, anybody have any questions on my favorite topic, the National Electric Code?
Come on, I know it was riveting reading.
Yeah, I think so. This is a public hearing, although nobody has signed up to speak. Any other questions, comments by council? Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask a relatively generic question that you may or may not have an answer to. But so this is additional, I say additional regulation. It's in improved code and everything from what we have in the past. Is this going to add a substantial financial burden to people who are building things, I guess?
No, not the changes in the National Electrical Code.
Okay.
They're very minor.
Minor? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that we weren't making huge leaps into something that was considerably adding to the cost of construction and things like that. So
No, as we discussed during the workshop session, really the biggest change is going to be on retrofits, and that just provides people opportunities to be able to be creative rather than being costly.
Okay, thanks.
To Councilmember Carroll's comment, though, I do recall there was an additional junction box that was added to new resident construction.
Which is already included underneath the 2020 National Electrical Code as adopted by the state. So it's not a big difference.
We're already there.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any additional costs for the city for implementing these new codes?
Not at all. The training of staff and everything else is already included in our existing budget. We're just utilizing it for focusing on the 2023 National Electrical Code instead of different aspects of different codes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the public hearing and approve agenda item 11.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Hinojosa Smith. All in favor?
Long and Ahosa Smith, Carol Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
I've never seen this much excitement over the NEC in a long time. Thank you,
all
sir.
very much.
Item number 12 is to consider approval and award of a professional services contract to Landscape Professionals of Texas for median maintenance services in the amount not to exceed $275,000 is provided for in the general fund and authorizing the city manager to sign any necessary documents. Mr. Ellison.
Good evening, Mayor Mays and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is David Ellison. I'm the Park Operations Manager for the Community Experiences Department. I'm here tonight to ask you to consider approval of an award of a professional services contract to Landscape Professionals of Texas for median maintenance services in the amount not to exceed $275,000 as provided for in the general fund, and requesting the city manager to sign any necessary documents. In this presentation, I will be discussing median maintenance services that the Parks Operations team is responsible for and the challenges related to the team which impact median maintenance. I will also provide a solution to help offset the challenges we have been experiencing that could prove to be a win-win for our team, the department, and the city. Finally, I will identify some next steps for implementing the solution. But before I do that, I would like to take a moment to provide a snapshot of how the park operations team is currently structured and what our responsibilities consist of for the community here in Coppell. Park operations team is composed of 1 manager, 3 supervisors, 8 crew leaders, 3 park technicians, and 12 maintenance workers. A majority of our responsibilities include maintaining parks and athletic fields, trails, and municipal grounds throughout the city. We also help support the department and organization with various projects and special events. Part of the maintenance of municipal grounds include median maintenance services. Our staff maintains 45 acres of medians, and that includes tasks such as litter and organic debris cleanup, weed removal, trimming of ornamental grasses and plants, minor tree maintenance, and mulching of landscape beds. Just moments ago, I stated that we had 12 maintenance workers on staff. That number is normally 17, but we have been down 5 FTE maintenance worker positions since December of 2021. This has really impacted our daily operations because we simply aren't able to provide the level of detailed service that we are accustomed to providing for our residents and the city. One area of responsibility that is impacted the most is our 45 acres of medians. In January of 2023, we began to consider an alternative solution to offset these challenges. The idea of utilizing budgeted dollar savings from the 5 open positions and shifting the funds into a median maintenance services contract began to take form. By March, we had a plan in place and the scope of work was developed. The scope of work in the base bid of the contract calls for the following: litter and organic debris cleanup, weed removal, trimming of ornamental grasses and plants, minor tree maintenance, and mulching of landscape beds. On April 4th, the city received 2 base bids, one from Nico's Landscape in the amount of $99,422, and one from Landscape Professionals of Texas in the amount of $227,604. Immediately after receiving the bids, the city began its formal bid review process. Soon thereafter, the city determined that the total best solution for the city would be Landscape Professionals of Texas. They are familiar with our median maintenance sites, and during the bid review process, they were very responsive to city staff, providing immediate and responsive information as needed. Nico's Landscape was also contacted, and to this date, they have not been able to provide the information requested by staff. So what are our next steps? If council would like to move forward with the staff's recommendations, it is to award the bid to Landscape Professionals of Texas in the amount of $275,000. The contractor would be prepared to begin the first week of May. City staff will continue to maintain medians until that contract work officially begins. It should be noted that the staff count will be reduced by 5 maintenance worker positions in the upcoming fiscal year 23 budget amendment. If, at some future date, the median maintenance services contract does not meet the service delivery expectations, staff would be requesting that some or all of the maintenance positions be added back to the budget. At this point, I will be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
I actually got a question.
Yes, sir. Mayor Mays.
So on April the 11th, we heard about reducing the maintenance of the medians, our new medians that are going in, by using more natural vegetation, et cetera. As we move into that throughout the city, how is that going to impact this agreement with the current company that you've identified?
Landscape Professional.
Thank you. I didn't want to look down and read it, so
That's okay.
anyway.
That was more geared towards obviously restricting water usage or reducing water usage. This contract, it will be for the existing medians that we currently have.
Okay. So I'm assuming, though, as we go to the lower water usage medians, we're going to see the maintenance also go down appropriately?
On the future medians,
yes.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you. That's all I had.
That's a good question.
Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, I did have one question. LPT's bid was 227, but the item is up for approval for 275?
Correct.
Where's?
There's also alternate bids bid in
Okay.
for additional services.
I guess I didn't see those. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. It's such a big gap between NECO and landscape. Did we try to see if, I mean, I understand we only got 2 bids, but did we try to see if there's an alternative? It just seems such a big gap that whether they're really off or either one of them, right?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Either one could be really off or
They're not.
they're not.
No.
So
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Question for you is, how long will the work last?
It's for an annual contract, 1 year. And then it could be renewed at the following year, the time of the contract.
So this is for the all medians?
All medians that we currently maintain, yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. So the 5 workers, obviously, I understand we're reducing the FTE count, if you will, and applying that money towards that. Do you know the total amount of the 5 positions that we would be eliminating, what that dollar amount is?
I believe just in salary savings, we were above $275,000. I'd only asked for $275,000.
Okay, so by reducing by 5 positions, we're going to more than make up for the amount of this contract that we were asking, or the ask amount.
That's correct, between salary savings and also benefits.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve item number 12.
Thank you. Have a second from Councilmember Nevels. All in favor?
Long and Hosa Smith, Carol Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours. Item number 13 is the city manager report, including project updates, future agendas, and direction from work sessions.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, during work session and during the council meeting, we received direction for the council to reconvene the focus groups for the Veterans Memorial to explore alternative locations, a design contest, program components for the Veterans Memorial project. Staff will continue the discussions with council at the upcoming council retreat, and the schedule for the official unveiling was delayed from the initial date of Veterans Day 2023. And then during the council meeting related to ADA improvements, we received instruction that in our future projects that we are to talk to adjoining property owners to possibly acquire either an easement or purchase property so that we could do the street level directional ADA ramps. And we are to go back on Plantation and speak with the adjacent property owners, asking if they are interested in either an easement or right-of-way acquisition for additional ADA ramp improvements. As far as other activities going on, winter averaging, Cycle 2 bills with winter averaging were mailed last week. Cycle 1 bills will go out on May 1 and 2, since April 30th falls on the weekend. And once Cycle 1 bills are mailed, all residential customers will have received their first bill reflecting winter averaging billing method for sewer. So far, no calls regarding the new billing method have been received for Cycle 2 customers as of yesterday. The Moore Road Boardwalk, if you haven't gone out, the piers are going in. About half of them are installed. South Beltline is finishing up with stamped concrete on Phase 2, and the roadway is expected to open up on traffic the second week of May, in which Phase 3 will kick in from Hackberry to 635. So that intersection is still something that you should stay away from while it's going under construction. Panel replacements on East Sandy Lake Road are still ongoing. The Dark Duck Pond Park improvements, say that 3 times fast. Construction is expected to begin in mid-May and will be about 8 months of construction. And then Thweet Park improvements. Construction is expected to begin in mid-June. As a safety precaution, the park will be closed during the duration of the project. Updates regarding park closure dates will be posted on city social media outlets as they become available, and the estimated completion date for that project is the mid-fall. And we received notice today that the city of Coppell received the GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for this year's budget. This award is the highest form of recognition in governmental budgeting, and its attainment represents a significant achievement by our organization. Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. Item number 14.
I'm sorry. I have something really important. I got to find the note.
Really important.
Really important.
Councilmember John says we're already on the next
No.
agenda item.
Well, somewhere in here is, and I'm not finding it. There it is. All right, sorry. We have two guests with us tonight, and they will be with us for the month of, basically of May. We are hosting two fellows from ICMA through the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative. It's a professional fellows program. The program is sponsored by the U.S. State Department, Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, and institute partners such as ICMA. The program brings emerging leaders to the United States for intensive fellowships designed to broaden their professional expertise. Tonight, we have with us Jeffrey Manalo from the Philippines. Jeff is a career executive and the current Deputy Executive Director of the Private-Public Partnership Center, the government agency tasked to champion and facilitate the Philippines private-public partnership. So welcome, Jeff. It's glad to have you. Kemp, I will attempt to say your last name, and I'll do the best I can. It's Kemp Yastisani from Indonesia. Kemp is a legal consultant in Indonesia on environmental, renewable energy, and climate-related projects. So, Kemp, welcome to the city of Coppell. Now, Mayor, that concludes my comment.
Now, the inside story is I wanted to welcome y'all, but he made me let him do it, so. All right, Mayor and council reports on recent and upcoming events. I believe today is the last day to apply for the Texas Power Switch. This is the program that we voluntarily offer our citizens to find the lowest utility cost, and it's available online. In case you didn't notice, early voting has started for the May 6th joint election. This runs through Tuesday, May 2nd, with election day being May 6th on Saturday. Please check out coppelltx.gov elections for times and locations. And then finally, the Cosby Library will be hosting a volunteer fair on Saturday, April 29th from 2 to 4 p.m. Local organizations from the DFW Metroplex will be there looking for volunteers of all ages to help you find ways to give back to your community and earn volunteer hours if you need them. Item number 15, council committee reports concerning items of community involvement with no council action deliberation permitted. Item A is report on the Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD and Louisville ISD by Councilmember Mark Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an update from Louisville ISD. Big congratulations to Marcus High School girls soccer team for winning the 6A state championship this past weekend. There we go. Last week's board meeting included 5 principal appointments and the celebration of Tracy Scott Miller and Christy Hassett at their final board meeting. And you can visit lisd.net for the full recap. The district is hosting a student summer job fair on May the 3rd. Local businesses looking for summer employees or interns are invited to participate. Visit lisd.net for more information or contact Lindsay Ayers at ayersl@lisd.net. Last Friday, LSD had their awards banquet, and the district recognized years of service, retirees, employees of the year, and teachers of the year. The elementary teacher of the year is Dr. Isela Russell Wellington Elementary Spanish immersion teacher. The secondary teacher of the year is Katie Bragg at Marcus 9th grade campus, where she's an English teacher. And then 41 LISD campuses were given the CREST recognition for the 2022-23 school year. This award recognizes around the state with the exemplary counseling programs. And I did not have an update for CFB.
Thank you very much. Item B is a report on the Coppell ISD by Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, we got 4 big things to get through on this CISD update. So number 1 is the CISD bond. So Coppell ISD residents in the communities of Coppell, Dallas, which includes Cypress Waters, Irving, Louisville, and Valley Ranch, who are registered to vote, can cast their ballot in the May 6th election. Early voting has started, so that is available to everyone. Voters are going to be asked to vote for or against the $321 million bond on May 6th. In accordance with state law, the bond referendum will be presented as 4 separate propositions. And to learn more about that, you can visit coppellisdbond.com. So the 4 propositions, Prop A is $269 million. And some of the items include safety and security features at all schools and buildings, multi-purpose lab makerspace for STEM at all middle schools, fine arts rehearsal space at Coppell Middle School North, fine arts rehearsal building at Coppell High School, career and technical education and STEM labs at Coppell High School, priority conditioning needs at all campuses and buildings, and new playgrounds and shading at all elementary schools except for Canyon Ranch Elementary, which was built in 2019. Proposition B, which is $39 million, includes is district technology, including upgrades and life cycle replacements of student and staff devices, wireless access, and audiovisual equipment. Proposition C is $2.9 million, and that is renovations to Buddy Eccles Field, including turf and track life cycle replacements and seat backs in the stadium. And Proposition D is $9.5 million, includes Coppell High School Fieldhouse life cycle turf replacement and tennis center improvements and locker room additions. On the second section is upcoming fentanyl prevention presentations. As you guys may know, we had Chief Barton here at the last meeting talking about fentanyl, and so I know the police department and Coppell ISD are partnering with that. So there's going to be several opportunities to get information and learn more about what's happening in our community and the surrounding communities with fentanyl. That is SHAC, which is the Student Health Advisory Council, has partnered with the district staff in collaborating, giving feedback, and approving a district plan for moving forward with specific drug awareness opportunities for learners. SHAC members include students, teachers, staff, parents, and community members. All right. Something really big on that coming up is there is a virtual parent university on May 3rd, which is called Addiction Does Not Have a Zip Code. A video of this presentation will also be available to families. All right. And just a note from Superintendent Hunt, he said, "We're all in this together, and I often say parents are partners in tackling these tough issues and educating our students. CISD is partnering with the city as well to increase awareness on this issue." So we know that's a big topic at hand. Item 3 that I want to talk about is Coppell ISD is launching early onboarding of STEAM at all elementary schools for the upcoming school year. And STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So we want to continue our trajectory as a district of innovation, all right, is what Superintendent Hunt is saying. Instructional design will promote higher level thinking and creativity for kindergarten to 5th grade students in CISD starting in the 2023 and 2024 through 2024 school year. So that is coming up. And then kind of last thing is some CISD accolades and good news. 2 CHS seniors have won gold awards for the National Scholastic Art and Writing Competition. Coppell Band Wind Symphony is bound for the Windy City. It's the Midwest Clinic is a prestigious international band, orchestra, and music conference held in Chicago every year. Only the top 5 bands in the U.S. attend this conference, so that's a big recognition. Congratulations to the 4 Coppell High School choirs for their recent success at the 2023 Region 31 Choir UIL competition. The choirs received sweepstakes and excellent ratings. Let's see. CHS students in the Technology Student Association visited McLaren's automotive headquarters in Coppell on April 5th to learn the science and engineering behind car design. Several of us council members have been there. That place is awesome. CHS sophomore Shea Patel is the singles district champion in boys tennis. The girls doubles team of sister seniors Lindsay Patton and freshman Lexi Patton placed second at district. So lots of success with our tennis teams as well. And then Coppell Middle School West math teacher Brian Choate was surprised on April 11th with the news that he is a Teacher on the Rise recipient for March. So that is pretty much all I have. That concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you. So, there was a few things, but we have such a great district in our area. We want to recognize all the stuff that's going on.
You wouldn't be a graduate of that group, would you be?
Go Cowboys.
Yeah. All right. Item C is report on Coppell seniors by Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Senior Center is live and vibrant. They just had the first senior versus seniors cornhole tournament on Friday, April 21st, which was coordinated by facility staff Pam Walker. This was the Senior Center members versus the CHS and UTEC seniors, and there were 32 members, 16 from Senior Center and 16 from CISD. This was a huge success and was featured on Fox 4 News, and 2 Senior Center members, Charlie Dunn and Mark Bass, won the tournament, and they are looking forward to defending their title next year. So if you want to learn some cornhole, there they are, Charlie Dunn and Mark Bass. More than 50 members attended the Blue Bonnet Tour in Ennis last week. They stopped to take traditional Texas Blue Bonnet pictures and had lunch in downtown Ennis. The next trip will be to Ham Orchards in early June. And the Senior Community Center has partnered with Keep Coppell Beautiful for spring gardening classes. You can come and learn gardening techniques for all seasons and be happy houseplants, or be with houseplants. Next class is Waterwise Gardening, which will be held on May 11th. They are still taking registration. Spaces are available. Dr. Hunt will be presenting information on CISD bond at the monthly Munch and Learn tomorrow morning, which, by the way, is at 11:30, and all of you are invited. Councilmember Neville is there, but apparently not tomorrow.
I'm not making it tomorrow.
So all of you are invited. And by the way, the members actually says that they look forward to these events where they hear updates from council and learn from leaders in the community. So again, you guys are all invited to be there. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Item number 16 are public service announcements concerning items of community interest with no council action or deliberation permitted. Anybody have any public service announcements? Seeing none, the time is 9:25 p.m. We will recess from the regular session of the Coppell City Council and reconvene into executive session in the first floor conference room. At the conclusion of our executive session, we'll reconvene here to formally conclude this meeting. So thank you very much. Yes. till we have everybody. Good evening. The time is 10:20 p.m. and we have recessed from executive session and we're reconvening into the regular session of the Coppell City Council. Item number 17 is necessary action from executive session. We have two items coming from that. One of them is just an announcement from me, but I would like to appoint an ad hoc committee consisting of Councilmember Hill, Hinojosa Smith, and Nevels to investigate and make recommendations back to this council on our city manager's review process and all of the stuff that entails. This is to meet and recommend an evaluation method and process and compensation for the city manager for the next annual evaluation. So I appreciate everyone's volunteering to do that, and we look forward to hearing back from you guys. I believe we have a motion that is coming from Councilmember Nevels.
Mayor, I'm happy to make this motion. Mayor, I'd like to move to renew the contract of City Manager Mike Land and provide a base salary increase for
COLA.
For COLA and merit in the amount of 3%, and pay the TMRS contribution of 7%, and authorize the mayor to execute the appropriate contract amendment.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Councilmember Long. All in favor?
Long, Hinojosa Smith, Carol, Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. There being no further business before this council, we adjourned at 10:22 p.m.